All right, what's up, everybody? So now, after we've cleared through the interlude movie, which is really just like a prologue movie, to be completely honest, it does reveal some things that would not be as surprising when you watch the first season. But I really don't think they're that surprising, to be honest. Like, you could easily watch that movie and then watch the first season, and I don't think you'd spoil anything for yourself, but whatever. So the second season of ReZero, here we go. It starts off exactly where the previous season ends, and that is with Amelia and Subaru sitting in a carriage with the kids who are all sleeping on the bottom, being led by Odo to like the town, right? And then Subaru wants to get something off his chest, and he's having a real hard time. Finally, Amelia convinces him to like say whatever's bothering him, and then he reveals to her that Rem essentially confessed her love to him, just like he confessed his love to her. And she looks at him like a strange look, and is like, "Who's Rem?" And it's like, "Ruh-roh!" And so then we go like back in the past a little bit, and we have Cruce, who's the green-haired lady knight, and Rem are sitting in a carriage together, just kind of like hanging out, and they're in the part of the caravan that's dragging along like the white whale. When all of a sudden, like, carriages start blowing up, and then they see this guy just like standing in the road, and so they charge at him, and then he like. At the last second, Ram grabs Cruce and jumps out of the carriage as it crashes into like this guy's like invisible barrier, destroying it. And then he's like, "Oh, you're so rude," and she's like, "Who the fuck are you?" And then she uses like her super attack on him, and he just like, it does nothing. And he's like, "That was rude. I'm in the middle of having like a dialogue with you, and you just attack. The fuck." And then this other creepy dude with like a big mouth and like teeth and like two swords comes rolling over, and he's like giggling and stuff. And he is the Sin Archbishop of Gluttony. And I can't remember what the other guy said he was. Greed, maybe? I don't know if they even said. Anyway, so he's another he's somebody else. I can't remember if they even said he was a Sin Archbishop. I do remember Gluttony. And so then they are talking, and the one guy, not the Gluttony guy, the other guy, that he's like tall with white hair and has like a creepy face. They both have creepy faces. But in fact, all the Sin Archbishops have creepy faces now that I'm thinking about it. But this guy has more of like a haunting, creeping face, while the Gluttony guy has more of like shark face. Anyway, so the other guy, whatever his title is, he like cuts off Cruce's arm, and so then Rem like activates like her ice magic crystals, which apparently like so many people have that capability, like Amelia, Puck, and Rem, which is, it's only 3 people, but it's still like the majority of magic users in this world that we've met. So at that juncture, and Puck. Amelia, yeah, I already said Puck. Okay, anyway, so at that juncture, she gets ready to fight, and so she starts fighting Gluttony, and she's holding her own pretty well. But then the other guy like blasts her, and then the Gluttony guy like comes down and like looks like he eats her. And then we head over to the Capitol, and there's all these people who are like injured, and that's when like Amelia and Subaru roll up, and they're like, "Oh no!" And he's like, "Rem, Rem, Rem." And then he goes and finds her, and she's like completely out of it. Like, she's like a rag doll, essentially. She's not responding. She seems healthy enough physically, but there's like something clearly wrong with her. And then he yells at like a doctor, and the doctor's like, "There's nothing we can do." And so Subaru's like crying because he's a little bitch, and then he kills himself, right? So then he wakes up, and he's back in the carriage, and he's like, "Amelia, what about Rem?" And she's like, "Who's Rem?" And he's like, "No." And then we like go forward to past the point when he killed himself. And he is now sitting in like Cruce's mansions over Rem, and he's just being sad and like thinking about everything. And he's like, "I promised you I'd always save you and be your hero, but I can't. Even if I kill myself 1,000 times, it's not going to take me back to a place where I can actually execute any kind of justice." And it's like, the tale as old as time for gamers throughout history. The autosave fucks you over. I can think of at least 12 different times, like off the top of my head. A lot of like older games, particularly, where not even autosave, just like me quick saving. Like in Half-Life, when I'm trying to get past like a boss or something, I was like, "I'm gonna quick save this," and then reload, and I quick save at like the wrong time, and then I'm dead. And it's like, Jesus Christ, now I gotta go back to like this real save. Or like, there's so many times when like kind of quick save, auto save can kind of really fuck you over if it's like right at the wrong time, like you're about to get hit and there's absolutely no way for you to dodge. So I feel your pain, man, in that regard. Anyway, so Amelia comes in, they have a conversation. Subaru like cries, like he like what is that thing that the weirdos on the internet say? He ugly cried. Yes, that when I like, I don't know how to define it. That is, he like ugly cries, and I was just like, oh Lord, we're doing this again. Like I'd finally been like, all right, this show's all right, and then we're doing this, and I'm like, oh God damn, how many episodes? 24 more episodes, 25. God, Jesus, this is gonna be a rough few weeks getting through this shit. Anyway, so then Amelia hugs him because he's a bitch and he needs to be hugged by a woman to like feel good about himself. This goddamn show. Anyway, Cruciate. So then we find out Puck shows up and he starts explaining things. He's like, "Oh yeah, this is like my friend because you told me that, and I believe you, but I don't really remember her either." But then he starts talking about the Sin Archbishop of Gluttony and how gluttony, what he does is he eats memories and he eats names. And if he eats your memory, you don't remember anything. And if he eats names and no one else remembers you, and if he eats both, you become like this. And at some point, someone calls it like the Sleeping Beauty syndrome, which that is not what the translation is. That is like, what do you call it? A localization. Because that is a thing. That's like a real life kind of disorder. It's come up before, but it's like, it's not really like a Japanese thing. Anyway. So, okay, so Cruciate has lost her memories, but has her name, so everyone remembers her. So then she meets up. She gets sent to get Subaru so they can have a meeting with Subaru, Amelia, the Sword Saint guy. I don't know why I can't remember this fucking dude's name. It's W something. Anyway, Felix and Cruciate. And then Felix is like real mean spirited towards Amelia, like everything's your fault. And then Subaru like loses it because he's a little bitch and he has no stoicism whatsoever. And then, but then Cruciate and Wilhelm, that's his name, Wilhelm, like back Subaru up, and then Felix has to apologize. So they're gonna head back to the mansion. They're gonna keep their alliance, but Amelia and Subaru are gonna take Rem and like the people back to the mansion so that they can get Roswell's help and like figuring out what's going on with Rem and figure out what's going on with all these things. So they head back with Otto comes with them, and then Amelia and Subaru have some more like cutesy moments. At some point, oh yeah, earlier when Puck showed up, he's like, "Hey, you promised me to take care of Amelia. I gotta go take care of some stuff." And Subaru's like, "Yeah, bro, of course." And then that comes up later because Amelia's like, "I haven't talked to Puck in like a couple days," and he's like, "Oh yeah, Puck said something about that," but he doesn't tell her that because he's a crying little bitch. I do not like him. I like, if you saw my previous videos, you may see that I reference Shinji Ikari as to be like him. And if you watch my Evangelion videos like months ago, they're online just like right now on BitChute, Rumble, and YouTube. But you see that the thing I'm most impressed with in the redos, the movies they redid in the last 10 years or 5 years or whatever, that the Shinji Ikari is like 1,000 times better than the one in the anime originally, because he's such a little bitch in the original ones. And again, it's like the only reason that show is tolerable to watch is because the fucking mecha battles are dope as shit in Asuka. So anyway, Amelia is no Asuka. She's more like a Rei, and Rei is a terrible character who's boring as shit. She's not terrible in that, like, the purpose she fills in the Evangelion show is excellent, as like, you know, and like the whole point of her and everything to do with her is good. But as like a character, yeah, I'm good. Like, there's not like character development. Like, some of the character work in Evangelion is, honest to God, like kind of all over the place. Like, and I've seen like hour-long videos of people dissecting every little philosophical and fucking thing like it's the fucking Matrix, which is also crazy. Like, I had a friend who did like a dissertation on like the Matrix relation to like the Jesus Christ story, and I was like, holy shit, man, we as a society have way too much free time. Like, the fuck? It's just a goddamn movie. Like, what the fuck? And that's how I feel about Evangelion. It's like that. It's cool as shit. And Asuka, yeah, boy. But when it's like, it's a lot of gobbledygook, to be completely honest. Like, I like Evangelion. I was down with all that shit when I was in middle school or high school, whenever that fucking thing came out. I think it was a little bit of both. But it's like that. There's nothing like it's like some grand narrative that like I'm gonna like change my way I view the whole world by watching this shit. Maybe it did for somebody, but like, cool, you're an adult now. Anyway, such an asshole. Okay, so back to this boring slop. It's not slop. It's fine. So they get back. We meet Frederica. She's the new maid in town. There's some like funny stuff with Primula, who's like 12 years old, but definitely has a crush on Subaru because of course she does. She's a woman in the show. And then So Frederica was like the maid who used to work at the manor, but then she left right before Subaru got there the first time because she had some shit to take care of. But now she's back because Ram asked her to come back, and then she found a letter from Roswell kind of explaining the whole situation that she references. They get Rem set up, and then Subaru goes to talk to Beatrice, and Beatrice... they're all trying to get to like the shrine because like when they got back to the village, it was supposed to be like Ram and the other villagers. Someone went to the shrine, right? They were supposed to come meet up with Subaru and Amelia and the other villagers that went to the capital back at the village, but they're not there. So ReZero. So we got to go figure out what's going on with that and get Roswell to help, elicit his help with like dealing with all this crazy nonsense, especially because he's like the strongest mage in the whole world or whatever. He's just kind of like fucking around, it seems, from what we could tell. So they gotta get to the sanctuary, right? Anyway, so Subaru goes to talk to Beatrice, and he's like, "What's up, Bei-kun?" Or Bei-chan or whatever. And she's like, "What do you want?" And he's like telling her about, he's kind of catching her up on things. And at some point he mentions Beltagis and how he killed her. And then she kind of loses it. She's like, "The fuck?" And then he hands over the gospel, and she's like, "The fuck you get this?" And he was like, "Oh, I got it from Beltagis when I killed him." And then she gets like real emotional and really mad and like kicks him out. So, and she says something about like, "Beltagis, I can't believe you like took it this far," or something. So clearly she has some knowledge of Beltagis or some relation or something. Like she's somehow involved in this oh my gosh, I got something in my eye. This whole situation with the Sin Archbishops, or with Beltagis before he became a Sin Archbishop, or there's something going on there. And they also talk about, Frederica reveals that Beatrice and Roswell are like friends. Like they're not just like, he didn't just like hire this random chick. That like she knows a lot about his motivations and what's going on, and she's being pretty secret about it, and she does not reveal any of that stuff. So then they finally convince Frederica to give them the information on how to get to the sanctuary, but she's going to stay here with Primula, who like got hired on as like a maid, because they put out like an advertisement, and Primula of course is like, "Subaru's there, I'm there." And so she showed up, and she's super adorable in her little maid outfit. Not like that, you perverts, but anyway, so all right, so then she gives them like the lowdown. They have to go through like the lost forest. People get lost there because the magic there doesn't let people find where they're supposed to go. And then there's like this guy they keep referencing, like Refel, so be careful of him. And then Frederica gives Amelia this like blue pendant and is like, "Hold on to that, that's gonna help." And so they head on their way, and they're going through the lost forest, and they're chit-chatting and flirting some more. And then all of a sudden, like the pendant like lights up after they enter the forest, and then Subaru does the wise thing. Even though someone literally gave it to Amelia to like help protect her, help her get through the forest, he takes it off her, and then she passes out, and he's like, "The fuck?" And then he like teleports out of the carriage, and he's like standing in the forest, and this pink-haired like elf chick is standing there, and he's like, "Hey, you're an elf." And then she runs off, so he follows and ends up at this like ruins. And so he walks over into the ruins, and then he hears a voice that's like, "Oh, so that's your desire, I see." And he's like, "Nani desu ka?" And then he like gets teleported out of there to like this green hill with like wind blowing in like, you know, it's like a hilly like plain or whatever. And then in front of him is this blonde chick with like a black robe, and she's like, "Oh, hello, I'm Echidna," like Gilgamesh's friend. And Gilgamesh is in like the story of Gilgamesh real life. Echidna. And then he's like, "Nani desu ka?" And she's like, "Oh, you might know me better by my title, the Witch of Greed." Yeah, she's the Witch of Greed for sure. So maybe that'll get was Greed. And he's like, and it's like, "Da da da." That's the end of episode 2. So what does the Witch of Greed Echidna want? Well, she just wants to chit-chat, apparently. So first of all, Subaru goes and has some tea with her, and they go back and forth about how he's such a weirdo. And how she's very excited to talk to him because he's such a surprise. He then drinks like some of her bodily fluids or something. The fuck. Anyway, we find out that this place they're in is the witch's graveyard, and that this like this hill with like the tea and everything is all just like an illusion that she's created with magic. And then she kind of takes him to like this space background thingy, and we find out about all the witches, right? So she goes through all 7 of the witches of sin, essentially. So it's like Sloth defeated a dragon just because she just wanted to take a nap. Gluttony made it possible for humans to create lots of food because she was always hungry. Shit like that. I can't remember what she did. She like did something. So, but essentially every witch did something to help mankind. But it was like a selfish thing they did, but it just happened to like so help human beings, like, or animal, or like human beings. It's like all the people, right? So the elves and the beastmen and all that stuff progress or be happy or more content or be able to advance in their civilization. And then finally the Witch of Envy killed everyone else because it took all their powers because of stuff. Anyway, we also find out that when Subaru destroyed Beltageese, the Sin Archbishop of Sloth, that he took his powers within him. So he's kind of like the witch in that regard, right? So Subaru's like, what? And we get no further information about that, at least for the next couple episodes. It's just like moving on. So then Greed, Echidna, is like, oh, you can ask me anything you want. And he's like, and then whenever you're ready, I can just send you back to where you were. And he's like, wait, where's the sanctuary? Is that where I was just at? And she's like, yes. And he's like, I want to go back there right now. And she's like, what? You don't have any questions for me? And he's like, not really. Why? Anyway, they go back and forth that a little bit, and then he's like, cool, hey, I promise you, right now, or something about her, she says something about her beauty, and he's like, no, I love Amelia, she's the most beautiful, so sorry, you're not as beautiful as her. And then she's like, I have never had anyone tell me that before. Anyway, so at that point, she opens a portal for him to leave, and then he's like, thanks. And she's like, oh, you have to do a vow. And he's like, what do you mean? And she's like, promise me you're not going to say anything about being here to anyone. And he's like, okay, sounds good. And she's like, I'll give you a gift. And he's like, what's that? And she's like, hey, you can go through the trial. And the trial is at that, like, literally at the place where he just got teleported from. And he's like, okay, sounds good, thanks. And what does that mean? And she's like, you'll figure it out later, tee-hee-hee. And then she kicks him through, like, the portal. And she's like, so interesting. And then when he gets back out, he sees Otto like laying on the ground, and then there's like this blonde-haired guy, Beastman guy, who just starts fighting for like no reason. Like he hits Subaru gets caught by Parcheesi, and then Parcheesi gets like suplexed, and Amelia's just in the back of like the carriage still. And then finally Subaru's like, the fuck are you, why are you doing this? And he's like, I'm Gilfoy or whatever, blah blah blah. And he's like, oh, Frederica sent us to see you. And he's like, what? And then he like shows him the amulet, and he's like, oh, my bad. And so then they wake Amelia up and Otto, and then the four of them head into like the sanctuary town. And then there's a lot of like, oh, it's not really a sanctuary, it's more just like outcasts and stuff. And then we go in there and we find Ram there, and Ram doesn't ask about Rem, which makes Subaru sadapotamus because, well, she can't because of the Sin Archbishop of Gluttony. So they get in there and they find Roswell, and he's beat the shit out of, like, he's covered in bruises, or he's covered in like bandages all over the place. And Subaru's like, the fuck happened to you? And he's like, woo-hoo-hoo-hoo. So then they have a conversation about how this is not actually a sanctuary, it's a sanctuary to his family because they've always protected it. But it's the witch's graveyard for the for the witch of greed, Echidna. And then he gets very terse with Amelia when she says the witch of greed. He's like, her name's Echidna. And she's like, okay, Jesus. And then we find out that this whole place is half-breeds, and that when half-breeds come into the Lost Forest, they can never leave. And that the humans came in here, but they also can't leave for some reason. And that they want the barrier to be broken, but to break the barrier, you have to pass the trial. And that's what Roswell had tried to do, and he had failed. And so then Amelia offers to do it. And then they go talk to the townspeople and tell them about how everyone else is safe and they're going to get them out of here. And then Amelia tells them she's going to break the barrier. And they're like, why would you do that? And she's like, because I want to be your friend. And then everyone says, we want to be your friend too. And because of the friendship of magic destroys all racism and concerns about witches. Because friendship is fucking magic. That everyone's doing great. And so then they head to the trial. And Amelia's like, I'm going to go. And like, good luck, thank you. And she gets a bunch of like spirits to help her and whatnot. And then she heads into the trial, and the whole shrine like turns blue and glows. And then Subaru's like, so we just wait out here? And Ram's like, yes. And then the light goes out, and Ram's like, that's not supposed to happen. And so Subaru's like, I'm going to go. And she's like, wait, you can't. And he runs, and then it lights up because Echidna, and like Subaru doesn't seem to remember that encounter at all. So then it lights up because Subaru was given permission by Echidna to go in there. And Ram's like, the fuck? And then Subaru runs in there, and he runs into a room and finds Amelia like passed down on the ground. And then he hears like a voice, and it's like, you have to rectify the past or reconcile the past or something. And then he wakes up in his bed back in Japan with like his anime figures on the wall. And then his dad, who's like this beefy hunk with glasses, like comes rolling in from like an Otame game, comes rolling in and starts wrestling with him. And they wrestle back and forth. And then his like cute mom shows up, and she's like, I'm hungry, get out here. And then dad's like, oh, I'm sorry, baby girl. Why don't you just eat without us? And she's like, my whole family's here. We're gonna eat as a family. He's like, okay. So they go out, and then she made a whole bunch of peas because she wanted Subaru to not be so against eating green things or whatever. But then all of them hate peas, so they just pass it around for a while, and then they make some peel off, and they force themselves to eat it. It's like hilarity ensues, right? And then we see that Subaru is like, he's got to go to school, but he like avoids school, and he's having like a panic attack. And so he waits till it's like too late for him to get to school on time, because then they like in Japan schools, they like close the fucking doors, and you're not going to school if you're too late. Or you get like serious trouble. So then he's like, oh, phew, I don't have to go. And then he has like another panic attack, and he doesn't remember anything about like the isekai world. We're at this juncture. So, but he keeps hearing like voices and stuff. in his head, like Echidna and Amelia and stuff. And then his dad comes in, he's like, hey, let's go for a walk. It's a beautiful day. So they go for a walk, and they're talking to people, and then Subaru has like another like little panic attack thing. And finally, him and his dad are sitting on a bench, and his dad keeps asking him if there's a girl in his life. And finally, he remembers Amelia, and he's like, yeah, there is. And then they start having a conversation, and then Subaru like starts crying because he's a little bitch, and apologizing for being such a failure, and talking about how things used to be so easy, and then things weren't easy, and then he was funny, and people liked being around him because he was a funny guy. And so, but he felt like he had to keep up in the ante, and eventually he just woke up one day, and he was like all alone, didn't have any friends, and it was time to start high school. And so he'd go, but he had a hard time making friends and like finding purpose in life. So then he just kind of like slowly stopped going. And then after like 3 months, he was like not going to school at all. And then he was waiting for like his dad to be like, get the fuck up and go to school. And it sounds like, why would I do that? I don't think school's that important. Which is based. And so they go back and forth, and finally Subaru is like, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna do something with my life. I'm not gonna just sit around. And he has like this vision of like Amelia and whatnot, and so he gets inspired. And so then the next day he's getting ready to go to school, and his mom's like, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm going to school. She's like, wow, why? And he's like, Mom, I'm trying to do better with my life. Why are you questioning this? And then she's like, I just think it's weird. Good old mom. And she has like the evil eyes that he has too, like not the normal anime eyes that most characters in the show have. Anyway, so they go for a walk, and then they talk, and she talks a lot about being the mother and knowing things but not knowing what she could do, so she just loved him because she's the mom. And this is excellent. This goes back, I saw something on Twitter the other day, and someone was like, name something in the last 10 years that had like a wholesome, good family relationship with everybody there. And in my head I was like, well, 100 different things, like, right? But they're all anime. like fucking, what was the most recent thing that came out that I love? Solo Leveling had a great family relationship, right? Like everything coming out of Korea, Japan, and even China has like great family relationships. But like the guy's not wrong. Like you're watching Western slop, it's like families are awful. Why would you have a father? There's Avatar, but that's like the one exception. Anyway, the waterbender one. So then they have a conversation, and then finally he tells his, and he did the same thing to his dad. He tells his mom that he's gonna miss her and that he's gonna make her proud and that he's not gonna see her for a while, but he loves her and that everything's gonna be okay. And she's like, you're silly. And then he like goes to school, and no one's at the school, and then he walks into his classroom, and Echidna's there, and she's like, wow, that was fast. I'm very impressed. How was rectifying your past? And then it's like dun dun dun, and that wraps up the little arc with episode 3 and 4 there. Echidna and Subaru talk a little bit about what happened in his like dream trial thingy, and she makes fun of him a little bit, and then he like tells her she's good looking in her school uniform, and he gets embarrassed and whatever, and she's like, I'm so excited for you to finish this trial, and he's like, I'm not gonna finish it, someone else is gonna finish it, and she's like, oh really? And he's like, you bet. And then he heads back out, and he gets Amelia up, and Amelia has like a complete breakdown. She's like, no, and she starts calling for her father, Puck, who's not there. He then gets her back and like resting and recovering from like whatever trauma she had in her brain and whatnot, encourages her and tells her she's going to do great. Roswell summons him at that point, and he brings him in on like a conspiracy. And so Subaru like yells at Roswell because why didn't he tell anybody about the witches, or like the not the witches, the witch cult and the attack and all this stuff, and he could have done something about it and whatever. And Roswell's like, oh, everything happened exactly as it should have, because that's how he talks. And he mentions that if he had come in and done something about it, which he could have easily done, obviously, that it wouldn't have looked well on Subaru and Amelia for being like the chosen, the fuck they call it in this, candidate, for being a candidate. And so because they were able to, she's like made amends with the people in the village, and they support her candidacy, which I guess means something. And then several other factors, and Subaru was able to make like a contract with Cruchet and take care of that and whatnot. And then he yells at him some more and talks about Rem, and Ram like grabs him and is like, you need to stop it, Barasu, which is what she calls him. And I don't even know this girl you're talking about, right? Because she's still got like the thing. Anyway, and so finally, Subaru like agrees to shut his fucking mouth about everything that Roswell says. No, Roswell also mentions that he initiated the attack because he wanted Amelia and Subaru to be able to do something about it. And Subaru's like, I'm just trash. I'm a piece of shit. Why did you think I was gonna be able to do anything? And he's like, oh, I have faith in you, Subaru. Anyway, okay. So then Subaru meets up with like Grizel and the pink-haired lady who's like, she's like 1,000 years old or something. No, she mentions she's like an old hag, even though she looks like a little girl, obviously, because she's an elf. And they talk about getting out of the village, and like Otto has an idea. What if, they just like knock the demi-humans out and carry them across the barrier, because if they go across the barrier they pass out, and then somebody, I can't remember who, reveals that it takes the soul away if the demi-humans like cross across the barrier while the barrier is up. And so it's like as if they're dead. And then Otto's like, I don't understand. And Super's like, I know exactly what that is, because it's the same thing that happened to Rem, right? Where she like lost her soul so people don't like recognize her, or she's like a doll, right? The Sleeping Beauty syndrome that was mentioned earlier. And so he's like, okay, cool, we got to figure something out. And then they have a conversation, and they agree that Subaru can like escort all the people of the village, like the humans who are not affected, out of there and back. And then, because they don't need to be here anymore because Amelia's here and she's going to do the trial. And then he says something about Garzel and the pink-haired lady doing the trial, and why haven't they done it in all this time? And they mention some sort of with where they're not allowed to. It's probably with Roswell, to be completely honest. He's manipulating all this stuff in the back end. So, they also talk about Frederica and to be careful of Frederica. And so before Subaru goes back, Ram tells him that Lord Roswell wants him, if there's any issues with Frederica, that he needs to tell Beatrice something. I can't remember exactly what it was. It was like Lord Roswell is like the Lord like Roswell wants you to answer the question. Something like that. Anyway, and he's like, what? And she's like, and Ram's like, I don't fucking know. Just that's what he told me to tell you. And it's like, oh, okay, sounds good. That's definitely going to be relevant. I'm assured. Anyway, Amelia tries the trial again one more time. It doesn't really work out. She's going to like rest up and think about it some more. Her and Subaru have a conversation about it. And then Subaru heads back with the people of the village. After getting the people in the village settled, he heads over to the mansion. And I recall I made a mistake here, because the girl who's like the junior maid, who's like the girl who has a crush on him, who's like 12, her name is Petra, not Primula. I am playing Shining Resonance Refrain, and there's a little blonde girl who looks exactly like her, a little anime blonde girl with the short hair, whose name's Primula in that. That's why I got confused. But it's Petra in ReZero. My bad. I apologize for 5-10 minutes ago, whenever I brought this up. Okay, so then he heads in, and the whole, there's obviously something ominous going on. No one's around. It's like that time of day, like not the golden hour. Yeah, like the golden hour, like the perfect lighting. So the whole place looks red, and so there's a lot of key hints that something amiss is going to happen. And Subaru finally figures it out after we figure it out, and he runs to Rem's room, and then he like is bleeding from his bowels, and it's like, ruh-roh, it's that crazy bitch again. And she's standing there smiling. She's like, I told you to keep your bowels ready before me to come back. Like, oh fuck. Time for a reset. This time around, we have the same. So Subaru pops up right when Amelia is waking up, like right after his little thing with Echidna and facing his past and whatnot. So Amelia has her breakdown. They go to a meeting, and at this point, because of conversations in the previous couple episodes about Amelia and how she's failing, and she fails again, and how Garfield or Garzel or whatever his name is says that he should be doing the thing instead of Amelia, he offers that. He says, you know what, Amelia, I'm going to do this for you. Like, there's 3 trials, and like I already faced one and passed it, so let me face the others. And then Garzel's like, you can't do that, motherfucker. Like, I won't allow it. And he's like, what? He literally remembers Garzel telling him previously that's exactly what he wanted me to do. And then Amelia gets kind of butthurt about the whole situation. Like, she is perfectly written as a woman, because she is immediately like, what, you think I can't do it? And it's like, Lord Christ, like, give me strength. Like, yes, we all know you literally have failed. And then in the other timeline, which I can't talk about, I saw you fail twice. That he's just like, Lord, give me strength. So anyway, the meeting wraps up. And then he's like, whatever. So he goes in and it's like, Garzel, what the fuck, man? What is the real reason you don't want me doing it? And he's like, none of your damn business. And then the little pink-haired elf lady is like, because Roswell told us not to. And we fall under his domain. And like as soon as we get the barrier down, then we're going to be under his like jurisdiction. So he can do like whatever he wants, essentially. And like if he orders us to do something, he owns us by like right of feudal law and such. Because he offers like his protection or whatever. So therefore we have to. And he's like, oh, Roswell's such an asshole. And then Garzel's like, you and me agree on that, homie. And then, so then he goes and talks to Roswell, and his decision, he talks about how he would like Roswell to take the people back, make sure they're okay and whatnot, and that he's going to go back to the mansion because he has some concerns there. And he gets Ram sent with him. Right. So then he tries to talk to Ram more about Rem. They like race back to see if they can avoid the whole thing. They get there, and Petra's there, and she's like, hey. And he's like, oh, and he gives her a hug and is so happy, and she's happy. And then it's like, where's Frederica? It's like, oh, she's like going around doing the barrier stuff. And so they go inside, and then Ram takes. Oh no, not Ram. I'm sorry. Subaru takes Ram to see Rem, and then she spends some time alone with her. And at that point, Frederica comes back. So then Subaru calls her out for being a liar and about the teleportation thing on the crystal, and this and that and that and this, and like how she's betrayed and something. And then she like denies. And then Ram comes up, and then her and Ram have like a totally different conversation while Subaru's there, but it's about the same stuff. And essentially, Ram calls Frederica out for being like a liar, or but having like mixed loyalties, that she has some sort of contract or something that she refuses to break. And that it's like adversely affecting Lord Roswell and his like charges or whatever. And Frederica's like, yes, that's correct. And Ram's like, therefore you will come to the sanctuary with us. And then Subaru's like, she's not going to allow that. And then Frederica's like, okay. And he's like, wait, what? So then they're going to like go get Rem. Wait, they have a conversation. Hold on, let me think. Then they have like a conversation about next steps, essentially. And at that, okay, yeah, that's what happens. And at that point, crazy knife lady, who seems like she's probably a sin archbishop, to be completely honest. Anyway, she pops in, and she's holding Petra like hostage. And so then Ram and Frederica pulls some maneuvers. Petra like is able to escape, but then like Frederica and Subaru get like nails in their back from this crazy lady, and then Ram like attacks her again. Subaru uses like his one magic spell, which is like the cloaking magic spell or the stealth magic spell that creates like a black fog, and then Ram and Frederica like grab Petra and him and like jump out the window, and then Ram's like, we gotta run and get help, and Subaru's like, no, we gotta go help Rem and Beatrice, we can't just blah 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 blah. And then Frederica's like, I agree, and then she transforms into like a big wolf lady using the power of like the crystal, I guess, because that's how she was fighting the crazy lady before. Was she like transformed her arm into like a claw? So now she transforms her whole self into a beast, and then she's super happy that Petra doesn't like give a fuck. She's like, oh, you're great. And so then while she's going to fight the lady and distract her, they're going to go, Ram, Subaru, and Petra are going to go get Rem and Beatrice. So they head inside, and then there's like a wolf beast there, because so the barrier is clearly broken, like a witch fiend or whatever. And so Ram like distracts that guy and leads him outside so that Subaru and Petra can go get Rem, and then he like looks out it looks out in the hallway, and then we get some like crazy fever dream of a situation. Like we just got a lot of noise and people yelling at each other. It sounds like Subaru got his head like bashed in or hit or something, because then he's like, we just see him like blinking his eyes open and like crazy images, and then we see like a lot of movement. We hear a lot of screaming and people fighting and arguing, and then he like gets thrown back into the mansion, which I guess he somehow was outside the mansion, and something about Partache, like the dragon chocobo guy. And at that point, he's like beat the shit out of, and he like sees that Petra's dead next to him, and then he like is able to like stumble to try to get to Rem, and then like the crazy lady shows back up, and he mentions Frederica, and she's like, oh, she was very fun to play with, and then she's about to like kill him as well, but then Beatrice like grabs him inside her like secret library, and he's like, no, I need to die so that I can go back and like try the and she starts healing him. He's like, what are you doing? I gotta go help so-and-so, Rem. And then Beatrice is like, the person you speak of no longer exists, and he's like, why me? That wraps up episode 6. Subaru and Beatrice end up going back and forth here. Like, he's super upset because he just wants to die so he can go back to the save point, right? Before it auto-saves again. So he's super concerned about that. So he really starts pressing Beatrice about why she saved him in the first place and didn't save anybody else. Because at first he's like super insistent about going out and finding Rem and the rest. And then she's like, everybody's gone. There's no one to save. And he's like, why'd you save me? And she's like, I don't know. And then at some point, she's like healing him, and he gets super mad at her, and then she's getting upset. And then he sees this book on the ground. He's like, the fuck is this? Is this the gospel? And then he goes up to grab it, and she grabs it. She's like, no, that's my book. It tells me what to do. He's like, what? And so of course he thinks she's a member, she's like a sin archbishop or whatever, or a member of the witches cult. And so they start arguing a bit back and forth, and then there's like a whole thing where it's like, did you save me? Did all this stuff happen because it was in the book? Blah, 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 blah. Did you make a deal with me? And she doesn't understand half of the shit that he's talking about, because obviously he returned by death on some of the stuff he was talking about. So she's getting confused and upset, and then he's getting upset. And then at some point he goes up to grab the book, and she hits him with it, knocks him over. And he's laying there, and she's like looking real upset and whatnot. And then a crazy bitch comes in, and she's like, ooh. And then she's walking towards Beatrice, and she's like, you better leave her the fuck alone. And she's like, oh, really? What are you going to do? And so she comes up and kills him. So, wow! And then he wakes back up in the shrine with the test right after he finished it, and right as Amelia's like coming out and freaking out. So then we kind of get like a quick rundown of all that going on. up to the point where he's standing with Otto and he's like, I need to talk to Roswell, something, something, something. And then Garfield comes up and he's like, hey, you got to come with me. You got to talk about stuff. And then Subaru keeps getting confused because Garfield keeps doing different stuff every like birth by death or whatever, birth by sleep. But this time he takes him to go see the old pink lady, like the lowly 1,000-year-old elf lady. And he goes to talk to her, and he tells them that like he's going to be with Amelia and Roswell, and he wants to do the trials and finish the trials so that they can get out of the barrier and then go help the people back at the thing. And they talk about how Frederica's like a fourth Beastman, and that's why she was able to leave, because there was some confusion because she was here and then she was leave. And so the barrier just stops like half, so like half elves, half beasts, half whatever, from leaving. And then she's like, please forgive me for this. And then Garfield grabs him, knocks him out, ties him up, and put him in a basement. And so he tries to kill himself, but the Garfield stops him. And then like everyone's looking for him and all this stuff. And then he's sitting there and he's like thinking about like maybe bashing his head to pieces or whatever. And that's when Otto comes in. And Otto comes and like rescues him, and then he's like, what'd you do? And he's like, I'm looking for your days. Like, Garfield didn't trust me. He tried to like buy me off, but I was like, no. And then I had to hide from him. And so he tells him like everyone's been searching for him, and there's like a trial going on, and Amelia like refuses to go and do her trial thingy until like they find Subaru, and like everyone's super concerned and whatnot. And then Otto got some help, and he came over here to rescue him. And he's like, and then Subaru's like, well, why'd you do all that? And then Otto's like, because you're my friend. Like a friend in need. And he's like, what's a need? Who's in need? And he's no, friend in need. And he's like, yeah, who's your friend in need? It's like the fucking baseball joke from like the 1920s. Like, who's on first? Look it up. It's pretty good. Anyway, my old man made me listen to this thing like all the fucking time. Because we're old. Anyway, so then he's finally like laughing because he's like, Otto, you are my friend. And he's like, yeah, buddy. And then they go up and it's Ram. Oh, hell yeah. And Ram was the Confederate who helped because Roswell. And so they sneak back over to Roswell. And it's like, Roswell, tell me the truth. I saw Beatrice had like a gospel. Is she like a member of the witches cult? And Roswell's like, ooh, no, she's not. She is. She's got like the true book. There's like two true books, and all the gospels are like fake books or whatever. And so Beatrice says something about her mother too. So maybe her mother is the witch, Satella. Who knows? Anyway, so they talk about stuff going on, and then Roswell tells him you can get Beatrice to help you by asking her to answer the question, or I think it's answer the question, or ask the question. Tell her to ask the question. And he's like, oh, Ram told me the same thing, like in a different life, essentially. And he's like thinking about it, very confused. And Roswell's like, I see, you need more information. And he's like, yeah. And then Roswell's like, say it's me. After she tells you what the question is or whatever. After she asks the question, say that's me. And then she'll help you because it's part of her contract or something. And he's like, okay, sounds good. And then, so him, Otto, and Ram are trying to like flee out of there. And they go, they're like with Parch Train or whatever, Parcheesi's, the dragon. And they're talking about what to do next and how they're going to like escape out of there and whatnot, when Garfield shows up and he's all raging and stuff. And so Ram stops to fight him. Otto grabs Subaru with Parcheesi and they run off. And then all the villagers, the human villagers that have been hiding out here, they like help with the pathway out of there to get past the barrier with the lights. But then Garfield catches up and Subaru's like, all right, that's fine. I just got to die. So he goes up to get killed, right? And then Otto like pushes him out of the way and dies. And Subaru's like, fuck, that's not what I want. I have to die. Then all the villagers start like dying for him so he can escape and whatnot. And he's like, no. And then the fuck happens? Oh, and then Parcheesi grabs him and is like dragging him off. And then he gets killed. And then as he's getting, so when he gets killed, he gets knocked back. And then Subaru's got that like teleportation crystal thing. And so then he like teleports and he wakes up like in the shrine. And it's like, who knows how fucking long later, because he walks outside and the whole place is covered in snow. And he's like, hello, is anybody here? So he wanders around and the whole village like it's completely abandoned and there's no one around in the sanctuary. And he's like, it's snowy and whatnot. And then eventually he sees like a rabbit. And he's like, hello, cute rabbit. And the rabbit like bounces up to him and he goes to pet him. And the rabbit bites his fucking hand off because it's the rabbit from fucking Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Like, the rabbit just kicks the shit out of him. And then other rabbits come and they just like eat him. And then he gets all eaten up. Yum, yum, yum. And of course that kills him. So he wakes back up in the shrine. And he's like, Lord Christ. Fuck, I hate this so much. And so he starts bashing his head on the ground, and then he like opens his eyes and he's on the hill again with Echidna, and she's like, "Hey, you doing okay there, buddy? I did something when you drank like my jizz, it helped like your sloth powers, so that like something, I don't know. She said some crazy bullshit that I was like, what? Anyway, so that it's supposed to help him stay like mentally stable or something, even though Betelgeuse was like out of his fucking gourd. Anyway, so then he's like freaking out, and she's like, calm down, have some tea, yada yada yada. And he's like, I can't tell you. If I tell you, you might die. And she's like, I think you can tell me what you want to tell me. And he's like, I can't tell anybody. And then he's like, all right, you better get ready for it. I get reborn when I die. I call it death, rebirth by death. And she's like, mm-hmm. And he's like, oh. And so he starts saying it a whole bunch of times because he actually said it and no one's ever heard it before. And he has like a complete mental breakdown. And she comes up and holds him. And she's like, hey there. Hey, big guy. It's okay. Calm down. It's okay. Take a breath. And she's like, I know. I've been watching you this whole time. I haven't been able to do anything, but I know exactly what you've been going through. And it's crazy, right? And then he's like crying and all this shit. And then he's like super happy. So he drinks her like jizz again. God damn it. This show. And then, God, wait. I'm getting things out of order. He drinks her jizz, and he says, thank you for listening and understanding and something. And then he has like his little breakdown. I think when he has his breakdown, fuck. Yeah, and then the credits roll, but it's like, the credits like the end of the season credits, even though it's like episode 8. So I guess we're finished with like another light novel. I don't know. But apparently she can help him with this whole thing because he needs help with this whole thing because he's really having a tough go again because he's a little bitch. But yeah, there you go. So episode 9 here with Minerva, we get a lot of information, but also no information. This fucking show. Excuse me. So the tea party commences. Subaru convinces Echidna that she should let him remember her. And in payment, this is somewhat out of order. I'm just going to talk about stuff as I remember. And in payment, she wants the bandage that Petra gave him because the person who gave it to him gave it with all her heart, and it allows Echidna to intervene or something. Then conversation turns over. At some point, they talk about Amelia and her trials and how Subaru wants to do the trials. Partially so we can see Echidna again, because there's something about like no one has ever been to like her tea party twice, or it's very rare. And then he talks about wanting to meet up with her again, and she's like, oh, though you're gonna have to try extra duper hard to, with all your heart, want to reach back to me to come like a third time. And he's like, wait, I can see you in the trials as well. And she's like, tee hee hee. Then he starts talking about the rabbits. So we learn that the Witch of Gluttony, Daphne, I think her name is, she created the white whale, the bunnies, and the black serpent, the white rabbit and the black serpent, or the black snake. I think it's a snake, black snake. Like in Nikki Goddess of Victory. Anyway, so he's like, oh, well, how do we defeat him? And she talks about how the white whale is the strongest, but the white rabbit might be the hardest to destroy because it like can multiply forever and ever and ever, and it's super hungry. So it goes to like where mana is. Oh wait, no, we don't learn that yet. And so they talk a little bit about how to destroy it, because essentially it's like the white whale. You have to destroy it all at one time. Like you can't just, like, each rabbit is like a part of the singular consciousness. So if you destroy like one or two, they'll just keep reproducing, and it can produce like super fast and kind of take over things and eat things up, and it's yummy, yummy, yummy. We also find out all these things were created like 400 years ago. There's some back and forth about just Subaru being Subaru and doing stuff, and then Echidna and like her whole dealio. And then at some point he's like, well, she mentions Daphne, the sin of, or the witch sin of gluttony or whatever, and how like, well, you could ask Daphne, but you got to be careful. Like, 1, don't look in her eyes, 2, don't touch her, and 3, don't release her bonds. And he's like, that sounds weird, but let's do it. And she's like, okay, be very careful, because apparently all the witches are like connected in death, and so Echidna's like here, and this is like the sanctuary where she can like present herself or like exist and do these trials and whatnot. But she has the connection to the other like 6 dead witches, or the other 5, yeah, because there's 7 deadly sins, and I assume, yeah. And then Satella is the witch of envy, who has her, and they talk about the death mark and like why he has it, and she's like, I don't know, but for some reason it like Satella is like really interested in you and wants you to live. And then they talk about how like he'll forever be reborn, but like the Witch of Envy doesn't give a fuck about anybody else. So anytime he like dies to like help them out, that's on him, because she's not doing it. So that's why the autosave is all fucked up. And then it also has something to do with like changing destiny or like fate, or like he has to make like all the right decisions, and as long as he makes all the right decisions, like the autosave automatically kicks in or something along those lines. Let me think. And then she talks about being charmed by him and how he's a real charmer of witches, because clearly Envy was a big fan, and she's also a big fan as the Witch of Greed. All right, so then she's like, all right, let me switch over. And then this like little girl pops out, and she's like, hey, I'm Tishba or something. And she is the Witch of Pride, and she like chats with him a little bit, and they like shake hands and whatnot, and then she like breaks him to pieces, and then she's like giggling about it, and then like another witch comes out and like puts them back together, and she is Minerva, the Witch of Wrath, I think. And they talk for a little bit, and then it's like, oh, here comes Daphne, bye. And so then Daphne shows up, and she's like in an Iron Maiden, and she's all chained up. It's got like scary shark teeth and stuff, and she's like, "Oh, hello, Subaru." And he talks about how like, "I'm sorry I killed your whale," and she's like, "Oh, to be killed and to eat, and that is all that matters." And he's like, "Why did you create all that shit?" And she's like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Why did you create the whale and the snake and the rabbits?" And she's like, "Oh, the whale is so big it would feed so many people, and the rabbits, they reproduce forever, so everyone can eat them forever and never be hungry again." And it's like, okay, cool, I get it. It's like a monkey paw situation. And he calls her out on it, because he's like, your rabbits eat everybody, you asshole. And she's like, whatever. And then he's like, well, how do I destroy it? And she's like, well, they love mana, so they're going to go where the most mana is. So if you can create like a bunch of mana, then you can like kill them all at one time. But good luck, because you're human. And then she starts like really freaking out, being human. And then like she starts to like almost break her bonds. And then she gets like zapped back up, and then Echidna's back. And so then her and Super get back to the conversation at hand and talk about stuff and whatnot. And then he starts to be like, oh, I feel lightheaded. And she's like, well, it's about time for you to return. And he's like, I'm going to do the trial, so I'll see you in there, and I'll make sure. And then he calls her out for like making it hard or making Amelia cry. And she's like, I'm not doing shit. That's Amelia facing her past. That's all on her, bro. And he's like, oh, okay. Well, I'm so mad. What an asshole. Anyway. So that continues on for a little bit, and then he gets like teleported back to the shrine where the trial takes place, and Amelia's not there, and he's like, huh, who pulled me back? And he's looking around, then he heads out, and then there's like this black cloak, like darkness shadow thingy, and it's like, I love, like no joke, it says it like 500 times, love you. And then he's like, what? And then like Garzel shows up, and he like rescues Subaru from being like overwhelmed by like whatever crazy shit this is, and then they call it the Witch of Envy, and I'm like, the fuck? And he's like, we gotta fight this thing and bite off its head. And Subaru's like, yeah, thanks for rescuing me this time. And he's like, and Garzel's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Oh goodness. The boys run away from this Witch of Death and Witch of Envy. I don't know. He keeps saying, I love you, chasing him around. And then Garfield reveals that he should be dead. Everyone's dead. Everyone was killed by this like shadowy witch beast thingy, monster, whatever. Except him, because Ram like blasted him away with wind magic, so he wasn't like overwhelmed by like the shadow creatures magic or whatever. That doesn't last for long though. The witch chases after them, and then we find out there's a whole bunch of these like pink-haired elf chicks, like a whole bunch of clones, and Subaru's like, what? And so the clones and Garfield attack the witch thingy, and then they get overwhelmed, and then she's like, love you, and then grabs Subaru and puts him into like a shadow realm and starts saying, love me, and then he's like losing it, and he's like, oh, I can't die here, this is gonna last for eternity, I'm fucked. And then he looks over at the band on his arm that Petra gave him, that Echidna wanted like a piece of, and he can like grab it and use it as a knife, and he's like, shit, Echidna knew exactly what she was doing, that crazy old bitch. And so he grabs it and kills himself. So he wakes up back, and while he's dying, he rips off like the mask or the veil or whatever on the witch that's saying, I love you, love me, and it's dun, it's Amelia. The fuck. And she's crying, and he touches her face. He's like, I will save you. And then he wakes up, and he's back in the shrine with Amelia. before any of this shit happened, and he's like freaking out because he's trying to like reach over to Amelia and like help her like wake up from her like failed trial, but you know he's like freaking out because he just saw her and she was like this crazy person who like killed everyone. Anyway, he's able to like muster up enough power to do it and to like kind of get her up and do all that stuff, and they chat a little bit, and she's like, you seem very hesitant, you okay? And he's like, yeah, I'm fine. And then he meets up with everybody else outside, and then he takes Ram aside and it's like, hey, can you distract Garfield? There's something I gotta do. And she's like, okay, sure. So he's wandering in the woods, and he's talking about how when he merged with the witch in like the previous existence, that he was able to observe like all these memories, and that he saw this like area in this tomb. And so he heads over there and he opens it up, and there's a giant crystal, and it's inside the crystal is the pink-haired lady, and it's like, what? And then he hears a voice behind him, and he turns around, and there's two pink-haired ladies, one in black and one in white. And she's like, aha, well, you found this pretty quick. I'm surprised, because it's still like day 1 since I got here, even though it's been like 10 episodes. Anyway, so they go and have tea, and she explains that like that person in the crystal is the original one, and that the echidna found her and thought she was a suitable replacement for her, so that she could like remain immortal, so that she could use her to create copies of her body. And then Echidna could like inhibit those copies, and the experiment failed. But that the one in the black here, she was one of the original 4 copies made, and so she was put in charge. This is like 400 years ago. She was put in charge of like maintaining the copies and like nurturing them and making sure that process kept going. So that's what she's been doing. While like the other one in white is just like attached to him. And then she mentions that she is an or that Subaru is an avatar. Or no, what is it? It's not an avatar. It's a. Anyway, Subaru is somehow tied to the Witch of Greed. I can't remember the exact word they use. It was, goddamn, like a servant of Echidna, the Witch of Greed, right? And that's why, and as like a servant, or like whatever the actual word is they used, he can control the clones. And then he mentions that Garfield is also one of these, and that he's passed the first trial and met with Echidna. And the clone lady is like, yes, that's true. And he's like, okay, well, don't tell Garfield that this happened, because I don't want him freaking out, because he's kind of like a loose cannon. And she's like, well, it's very brave of you to like tell his lover not to like not to tell him anything. And he's like, I don't even know any more information about this. Anyway, so then he's leaving, and he runs into Amelia, and they have like a nice little chat about the trial a little bit. They just kind of talk about how she's anxious and she's trying to figure some stuff out, and he's like thinking to himself, he's like, I'm going to take care of this, make sure everything's okay and everyone's okay, and that she doesn't turn into this, and I got to get the people out of here so like the white rabbits don't eat them all up. And he's got a lot of shit going on. Like there's a lot of shit going on with this like repetition cycle, this volume, I'm assuming, this light novel volume, this arc, if you will. And so then he goes back to his room and talks to Otto for a little bit and is like, hey, just hang tight and stop freaking out the villagers with your crazy nonsense. And he's like, yeah, whatever. And so the next day, Subaru, or early in the morning, he writes a letter to Amelia telling her that he's going back to the mansion. He'll be back soon. Don't worry about him. He'll be okay. And then also to make sure Otto and the villagers don't follow. So then he hops on Partouche and starts heading out. And he runs into Garfield. Garfield, throws him against a tree and is, threatening to kill him. And is like, I could think of the witch on you. And then Subaru, who's, gone through this before, is like, oh, yeah, motherfucker. I know about your secrets and something. And you got to trust me. And, why should I trust you? You don't know what suffering's like. And then Subaru's like, I've seen the pits of hell, multiple times, you dipshit. I know exactly what it's like. I'm going to unlock all the secrets and save everyone here. And it kind of freaks Garfield out, but he's like, okay, fine. And so he lets him go. So then Subaru and Partouche make it over to the mansion where they meet up with Frederica and Petra. And he's like, hey, go to the village and hang tight. I got to figure out some stuff here with Beatrice. And so Frederica, and then he thanks Petra for the little armband. And she's like, okay, well, you can thank me by taking me on a date. And he's like, yeah, sounds good. High five. I mean, I'm 6 years older than you, so it's not that crazy. Even though she's 12 and he's like, oh, he's only 5, 17. Yeah, that's not that weird. Anyway, so, I mean, it's weird, but it's a friendly thing, whatever, who cares? So then, he heads out, so they head out, and then he heads up to Beatrice, and she starts saying some, real cryptic bullshit, oh, so I guess the time of the clock tower is the phase of the moon, or I don't know, she said something, it made no sense, and he's like, it's time, and she's like, okay, and then that's the end of episode 10. Subaru comes in pretty hot and fast here with Beatrice. They talk about the book, how it's protecting her whole life. She talks about how she's been here for 400 years, that she was contracted by Echidna to watch over the library, and that she essentially needs somebody to end her contract / end her life. And we also find out that she's a spirit, like Pac. Subaru then grabs the book out of her hands, and it's blank. It's been blank for quite a while now, according to her, and she thinks it's because the time is for her to end. And then she mentions kind of the thing that Roswell kept bringing up about, like, ask the question about something, and then tell him it's you, and that'll get her to help you. Right, so she literally says that. She's like, I don't know if the person that I'm waiting for is you, but I don't care. I want you to kill me. And he's like, no, I can't kill you. And then the crazy lady shows up who likes to disembowel people, and she's like, oh, I'm going to disembowel spirits. This is so exciting. And so then Beatrice casts like the shade magic, whatever. They love that. It's like flashbang. And then they run off, and before they go, she mentioned something about the other person going to the village to take care of the other maids because they're not all here, which was unusual. And so then they run, and they're headed towards the village, and they get to a bridge, and there's dun dun dun. Remember the little blue-haired girl that like broke the barrier and like the mob beast all the way back in like season 1? That they were like, hey, where'd she go? Oh, she must be somehow engaged with this like witch cult or whatever somehow. Well, there she is, and now she controls mob beasts, which are like the witch creatures or whatever. And so they have a conversation with her, and then the other lady shows up, and so Beatrice fights and defeats her, and then she turns to like destroy the little blue-haired girl, and then Subaru has like feelings about that because she's just a little kid and she's being controlled by somebody else, and they need to figure that out and all that stuff. And then she pushes Subaru away, and she gets stabbed from behind by the disemboweling lady, who apparently did not die, even though she got turned to crystals and broken, which is some old bullshit, like right better. Anyway, so then they injure him. They injure him pretty good, and then they stab him in the eye, and he gets like. He doesn't get gutted. He gets like slashed upside the head. Yeah, that's what happens. And then Beatrice like teleports him back to the sanctuary. So back in the sanctuary, there's Amelia, and Amelia's like gone crazy. She's like, oh, my love, hello, I love you. Just like in the one thing before, where she was like so isolated and by herself, and it seems like no time at all has gone by, or like maybe a day, but she's like completely lost it already, which is kind of interesting. And so he stumbles out, and he's all fucked up, and then he's like, I need to talk to Roswell, to Garfield and Ram. So they go talk to Roswell, and then Roswell, Subaru calls him out. It's like, you're the one summoning the snow, and Roswell's like, ooh, I can't keep anything from you. And then Garfield starts to get mad, and so then Ram steps in the way to protect Roswell, and then Roswell stabs through Ram into Garfield, killing them both. Well, not killing them both, because Garfield starts to change again, and then Roswell like kicks him in the face and kills him, or stabs him again or something. I don't know. It's kind of dark to see exactly what happened. But so they're both dead, and then Subaru's like, the fuck? And then Roswell starts calling Subaru out because guess what? Dun dun dun. Roswell knows for a fact that Subaru is like reliving lives over and over again, and he points out that like how he knows, like it's like, oh, sometimes people die, you get all concerned, but this time it's like you're mad, but you're not like that mad, and your grief's not like that real. And he even at some point Subaru's like, well, just have to stop next time or figure it out next time. And so he is also somehow contracted with somebody. There's like a vow, probably with Echidna again. And then Roswell has like his own thing, and he brings up Beatrice. He's like, I envy her for being dead, but she'll be back later, I guess, unfortunately. And then Roswell like kicks the shit out of Subaru and talks about how he needs to focus on Amelia and protecting her, and she's the most important thing, and that he needs to catch up to Roswell, and that someday he'll catch up to Roswell, and then he'll like know what he knows, and then they'll be able to have like a real conversation or whatever. Then we see the white rabbits are coming out, so then Roswell like blasts Subaru out with a fire or whatever, and then they go out there, and then Roswell has some more cryptic shit to say to Subaru about what's going on, about being resurrected. He's like, I don't get resurrected, but I'm sure you'll help the next person out, so like I'm fine. And Subaru's like, you're inhuman, and he goes, ooh. And then he gets all eaten up by rabbits. Subaru avoids the rabbits somehow and like meanders on over back to the temple where Amelia's at, and she's like, oh, my love, come lay on my lap, you look so hard. He like lays down, and then he starts to like die. Because of course he's like all bloody and injured and bleeding out and cut and blasted and bruised. And Roswell says something about not being able to kill Subaru, but he can like hurry the process up that's already started, I guess, where he's just like bleeding out and dying. That wraps up episode 10. After a little rebirth action, Subaru picks up Amelia again and realizes that if he leaves her there in the state to do the test, that's how she becomes like the crazy person or whatever. He then goes through like some of the similar steps, like meeting with everybody as a group, thinking about Roswell, doing all that stuff. And then he kind of meanders back over to the trial. He's really trying to figure out how to help Amelia do what he needs to do. He gets like very passionate about being able to save Amelia, save all the people, do what he's got to do. And so he starts screaming out for Echidna, and then like trial part 2 begins, which is like a trial about your present. But because his present is like an infinite amount of times he's died or whatever, he starts like reliving all these moments as if he died instead of was a rebirth, right? So like all these deaths, people talking about his deaths, being like him getting stabbed and not getting healed, kind of all this stuff, like it's driving him like nuts. Then kind of out of nowhere, Rem shows up, and it's like, are you Rem? Yeah, I'm really Rem, blah, blah, blah. And then she comes up to comfort him and tell him it's okay, she can carry the burden and all this stuff. And then she goes in for like a kiss. But that's when Super realizes that real Rem, obviously this is not real Rem, real Rem has never offered to carry his burden, has always been like his harshest critic, telling him to get up, helping him move forward, and helping him keep going instead of being like, I'm done, I'm not going to do this anymore. So then he like freaks out and calls out. He's like, who are you? What's going on? And then she transforms into this like pink-haired girl, but not the pink-haired girl who's like the clone lady. And he's like, the fuck? And then we find out that she is the Witch of Lust, right? And that normally people don't see through her like disguise or whatever. So he starts approaching her, and then he starts having like a hard time breathing. And then Echidna steps in and like drags him to the tea party. And she mentions that if he gets, she's got this thing called like maiden's kiss or whatever. And if you get too close to her, you like stop breathing, and then like your heart stops and you die or whatnot. And so then Echidna starts chit-chatting with him about everything that's going on, about the trial, and about how because he's been touched with like the curse of death of the greed of envy, or the witch of envy, that, you know, he has all these worlds or realities or fake realities that he's like lived through to get to like the real one. And like, is the real one or the current one, or is the current one the real one, or like what's real and what's not? And she gets kind of esoteric and cryptic about all that shit. She then starts talking to him about how she wants to help him, but to help him, she needs to form some sort of contract. And he's like, contract, what do you mean? And she's like, well, you give me access to like part of your abilities, and I'll help you with whenever you need help, and all this stuff, and yada yada yada. And then he's like, it looks like he might actually go through with it. And then the Witch of Wrath shows up, like she does, like smashing into the earth and being like, stop, don't do that. And then the Witch of Lust shows up, and she's like, oh, Echidna is telling the truth, but she's not telling 100% of the truth. Like, she's not lying, but she's keeping a lot of stuff hidden. So maybe you shouldn't do the thing with the contract or whatnot. And then several of the other witches show up, like the witch, like all of them. So we finally meet the Witch of Sloth, Sekhmet, and then there's like Daphne, the Witch of Gluttony, and then the Witch, it's Wrath, Lust, Sloth, Greed, and then the crazy one. What the fuck's her dealio? The one that like broke his face before. What was she again? Hold on. Greed, Wrath, Envy, Lust, Gluttony, Sloth. What's the last one? I don't remember. Anyway, so then they're all there, and they're all chatting with him, and they're kind of trying to convince him not to take the deal. And with Echidna, and then Echidna goes on this like rant where she's like, we'll be together and all this stuff, and I'll help you and you help me. And then Super's like, well, what about the true ending I want? Like, I really want this thing to happen. Are you gonna help me with that? And she's like, he's like, if I make the contract with you, will that happen? And she's like, well, and then she like rants off some more, and then finally he's like, okay, I got one more question for you. And then he brings up Beatrice, and it's like, you don't want to make the contract with Beatrice? Yes. So who's this person? How can I help her like find this person that she's looking for so she can be released from your contract? And Echidna's like, I don't know who it is. And he's like, what do you mean? It's like, that's what she said. She said, or, you know, it's like she was supposed to like find somebody. That somebody could have been anybody. And so the fact, it's like, well, she could have found that somebody right away, or she could have been waited for 400 years and now she could be suicidal. I don't know. That's like her choice. That's like what she wants to do or something. And then Super gets like super mad and like calls her out and her bullshit out and stuff. And then says he would never make a contract with her and that he's going to be with somebody else and all this stuff. And then and then it's like, it gets kind of dark, like a shadow comes by. And then one of the witches, I can't remember what she is like, hey, it's Stella. And it's like, ruh-roh, it's the witch, the Witch of Envy. She's here. Dun, dun, dun. Now that Stella's here, Stella, the Witch of Envy, we're all here. All the witches are here. Hooray, it's time to have a conversation. So Stella starts going on about how she loves Subaru. and how she does everything for her. And then he like is a whiny crybaby, and then the witches try to talk to him, and he whiny crybaby some more, and he's like yelling at all of them and like whining about himself. And eventually they come to the conclusion. Well, so they start discussing how Subaru's main problem is not that he's weak and pathetic; it's that he doesn't love himself. And this gets revealed over like the length of most of the episode. Well, the witches, particularly Estella, but some of the other ones too, try to convince him that he's worth being alive for. And then he says he doesn't want like the rebirth thing anymore. And they go back and forth. And then he starts to like try to kill himself. And that makes like some of the witches mad. Like the Witch of Wrath gets really mad about it. Like killing yourself is like a bitch move, I guess, and that's like against her thing. And then some of the witches try to defend her or try to defend him, and then he like slowly starts to die. And then all the witches use like their various abilities to like bring him back, to show him like all the people that care for him and that he should really care for himself and to love himself. And Estella mentions that as well. But like all the witches get involved in like helping him like discover that he needs to care for himself and learn to love himself, and that because Estella wants him to love him, or Setella wants him to love himself, is the reason she gave him the power, and the reason like she loves him, and because she loves him, she wants him to love himself, right? Okay, so then we go through that whole thing, and then finally he's like, all right, I think I'm a little bit better now. And it's like, Lord Christ, how many times has this guy had like a breakdown in this fucking show in the last 2 seasons? Like at least 3 times, which is a lot. Damn. And there's so much just like boring talking and like slowly learning information. Like this would be much better as a book, I guarantee. I still don't know if I'd ever read it. I have no interest in it whatsoever, but just watching this is just like there's so much standing around like bullshitting around with people and like having repeat conversations with like slightly more information. This will probably be good as a visual novel, to be completely honest, more than anything else. Anyway, I'm pretty sure it's based on a light novel. But so then the witch agreed, tries to make another covenant with him, and he's like, no. And she's like, all right, you don't want my powers? That's fine. And then he like goes and covenants for the first time, I guess, with Estella, the Witch of Envy. And then at some point she's like, I need you to come find me and kill me. And he's like, I'll help you no matter what. Like help her die, I guess. And thus he gets returned. But when he wakes up, he's no longer in like the trial chamber. He's like outside, and Otto's there, and he finds out that Partiche like dragged him out because he was like freaking out. And then he tries to go back inside, and he can't, and he's denied. And the reason why is because dun dun dun, he had the Witch of Greed's like blessing, but now he doesn't have it because he rejected her, and he's like fuck. And so he tells Otto and Partiche to go back, and he's got to go do something. So he goes to talk to Roswell. And we learn that just like with the witch attack, the witch cult's attack, that Roswell set up the assassination attempt in the manor for like Rem and the maids, right? And he did that because he's trying, and he goes on this whole like crazy rant, Roswell does, about how he's trying to get Subaru to like convince himself that Amelia is the most important person, and that Roswell essentially places all his hope and belief like in Subaru and his ability to do things. And so everything he's doing like behind the scenes, like all the shady shit, is to like push him there, and that the only people that give him hope in life are like Ram and him. And so they're the most precious people to him, and they have like a whole bizarre conversation about that. And I say bizarre because it's a lot of just like screaming and then like crying and like yelling at each other. And Roswell reveals that he made a covenant with a kid now like 400 years ago, and that since then he's been like he admits that he's like a little crazy, which is a baller move. Anyway, so they have this whole conversation, and then Subaru like stumbles out, and he's like super pissed off and like sad about stuff, and then he like collapses in the ground. It looks like he's gonna like kill himself or something, and then Otto shows up, and he's like, hey big guy, and Subaru's like, what are you doing here? And he's like, and Subaru's laying there in the ground like withering around, like crying out about how he wants to like figure something out or he needs help. He doesn't know what to do, and then Otto's like, I know what to do, and he's like, what? He's like, take a deep breath, and then Subaru's like, okay, so he takes a deep breath, and then Otto like punches the shit out of him. And Subaru's like, what? And he's like, there you go. And I'm like, the fuck this show, man. What the fuck am I watching? So Otto ends up knocking Subaru some sense into him about how he's got to rely on friends and stuff, and this gives Subaru an idea, a conspiratorial idea. So he kind of shares with Otto everything that's going on. I guess he doesn't tell him about being rebirthed because that is impossible for him to tell people about that, right? Anyway, so he he decides they're going to put something together. We don't learn about the plan specifically. We just learn that Otto's like game for it. And so first step is to go to Roswell. He goes to Roswell, who, again, he spoke with him in this cycle. So he's like, oh, you're back. That's funny. And then Subaru like calls him out, says a bunch of stuff about wanting to save everybody and how he's going to do it and how he wants to make a bet with Roswell. And if he wins the bet, then Roswell has to be subservient to Amelia, not like the other way around. And that he's going to save everybody. And then they talk about the winter coming in 3 days and how the attack on the mansion's going to be in 3 days and how Roswell has to stop doing all the shady shit that he's doing if Subaru wins and saves everybody. And so Roswell finally is like, okay, sounds good. So then next step is Subaru goes and talks to the little pink-haired girl. I can't remember the name. Anyway, goes in there, starts talking to her, realizes it's not the person he talked to before because she has like a different name, like it's like Alpha, Beta, Sigma, right? So her name is like Alpharia, and the other one was like Belial or something, and they all have like the same first name, which is like Ren, something like that. Anyway, so this is Alpha, and he's so then he realizes there's four, and then she tells him there's four of them, and they take turns. But then one of them, the Sigma one, she like fucked around and found out, I guess, and so she got banished, and now it's just the three of them running through it, and they're all kind of like spirits. So they're just mostly held together by mana. So they have to take turns like maintaining the machine, the magic machine that keeps all the clones alive. Anyway, he gets her involved with like the conspiratory thing that's going on, and she kind of agrees to it as well. And then he talks about how he's going to have to confront Gar and figure it out. And then there's also more hints that Gar and the other lady, the Sigma one, are like fucking or whatever. So that's fun. Anyway, so next step is he goes to talk to Amelia, and Amelia's like all satapotamus, and she's like under the blanket by her bed, like not even in the bed, like on the bed. Anyway, they have a conversation about how she needs to trust him and how she needs to face her past, and he's willing to be there for her and all this stuff, and they talk for a bit, and then she like falls asleep from just being like so tired from staying up the whole night. And then at that point, Subaru's like goes to choke her out to like get Puck to show up, and he's like, ah, and he freezes Subaru's hands, is like, gotcha. And then he's like, bro, I was just trying to get you here. And he's like, yeah, thank you for summoning me. And he's like, I need your help. And then later on we see like in the evening, this is like in the morning, so, or it's like a noon, and so in the evening when the sun's coming down, right, Amelia wakes up and there's Puck, and he looks a lot smaller, and they're talking, and he's like, I'm going to break our contract because it's the only way for you to like unseal your memories and be able to face the trial and overcome whatever you need to overcome and be a better person. And so she cries, and he's like, I love you. No one ever loved you as much as me. And it's like, okay, that's kind of creepy, but whatever. But then he does mention Subaru being someone that he can rely on, even though he's kind of an asshole. So then she cries some more, and then Puck like breaks the contract, it disappears, and then she cries, and then she starts remembering this like woman in like the snowy land, and at some point she revealed to Subaru that her whole plan with becoming like the queen is to free the people, is that if she does that, Ross will promise to like unfreeze the forest, which will like let all her people, like the elf people, be free. And so we see it looks like her mom, who actually looks like she might be human and not elf, but I don't know, I could have just missed seeing that. But she's like hugging Amelia when she's younger and talking about how she loves her and she'll always love her and always keep her in her heart. And Amelia like cries. And then the next morning, Amelia's gone. And so everyone's looking around for Gar, finds out about it, and he's like, fuck. And so then he runs to talk to like his girlfriend, the Sigma lady, and she's not there. And then he runs to like the crystal and no one's there. And then he's like trying to use his like small pea brain to like put things together, and he's like, wait a second, someone was talking to her because there were 2 cups of tea at the house, and I don't drink tea because fuck that shit. And then right as he's about to leave, Otto shows up and he's like, aha, looks like we have the new master of the banquet or some bullshit cryptic nonsense. And Gar's like, nani desu ka? And then Otto's like gets like a sly evil grin, and he's like, oh, something. And then we switch over to Amelia, who's like cowering in like a corner somewhere, like crying. And then Subaru walks up and he's like, hey, what's up, girl? And she's like, you found me. And he's like, yes, I found you. And he sits down and he's like, I got something to tell you, which wraps up episode 14. So then we move over for episode 15 to Otto, and we get his whole life story. And the episode starts off with him facing Garf still. And he uses like some shenanigans to Garf like pushes him aside and goes to leave, and then he like falls down into a hole and then a bunch of bugs attack him, and then Otto makes a break for it, and then we get his past. So we find out that from like the early birth he was born with the divine protection of being able to speak languages, like all languages, including animals, and hearing them. So when he's like a little kid, he can't like understand human speech or hear it because it's like overwhelming, all the different sounds, like all the animals speaking at the same time and stuff, and he's like, he can hear them very clearly. he doesn't understand what the animals are saying yet, but it's like crazy. And so at some point, like doctors give up on him. His family's like super sad. They're like, they seem like really wealthy nobles or merchants or something, like a huge complex and like servants and stuff. Anyway, his older brother, who he says I think is like 7 years older than him, teaches him how to write. And because once he's able to write, he's able to like convey to like his parents what's going on and to everybody else. And then they like are, you know, it seems like it's a pretty good family life. And then like life goes on. He eventually one day like a spirit comes, and then he like realizes he can like understand animals, and so he tells his older brother about it, and then his younger brother tells some kids at school, and he gets bullied, so then he shows them that he can do it, and someone's like a plague of Zada bugs or whatever, and then people like freak out. He's like, all right, I can't do that no mo. And then one day he's just like walking around, and some kid like beats him up because he's cheating on his like the guy. So the guy's mad that he's hooking up with the dude's girlfriend or whatever. And then Otto's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not doing that at all. And he's like, well, I was bored, so I got nothing else to do, so I'm going to figure out what happened. So he goes around and talks to the animals and figures out that she's like dating around like 8 guys. And so he goes and like tracks around, and she's like making out with one guy, and she calls him out. But I guess she's the daughter of like the most powerful person in like the town or village she grew up in or whatever. And so he becomes like an outcast because of that. It's pretty contrived. This show's not great, but oh, it's so boring. Anyway, this part is actually kind of interesting. And so then he becomes a merchant, and he grows and grows and grows because he can talk to animals, and he's shrewd and good at business. Then one day he runs into the sloth guy, built the geese, and he takes him prisoner, and he gets rescued by a wolf guy, which I don't remember his name is, the werewolf guy from like the little girls' entourage with like the cat kids who are like the cat twins who are like the bosses or whatever, or the head of the generals. They're the generals of the army or whatever. Anyway, so it's rescued by them, and you know that's how he kind of ends up being where he's at when Subaru runs into him for the giant well expedition business. All right, so then back to the present. He continues to run through the forest. Garf is like super mad. He finally escaped his tunnel and comes to attack him, and so he uses some sort of like fire magic item that he got from the Merchants Guild over here. Like he bought at the item shop. It's so stupid. And he uses that, and he runs around and runs around. Eventually he gets caught and beat up a little bit, and the Garth's about to like really beat him up, and then Ram shows up, and Ram does wind magic, and then Ram and Otto take turns like kind of blasting him and hitting him and being annoying, and he turns into like his giant monster form, and he's getting like super pissed off about the whole situation. And then Otto's like, oh man, we're fucked, but you know, hopefully Subaru can do what he needs to do. So then we go back to where Subaru was at the end of the last episode, and he's talking to Amelia, and she's super mad because he abandoned her, I guess, which I don't remember that happening, but I guess that's what happened when like he was like, I'll be with you, and then he like stepped out for a minute, and then Puck like dissolved their relationship, and then Subaru wasn't there immediately because I don't know. He'd just like stay with her, and she's like a teenage girl, and so I had like a complete breakdown about it. Anyway, so then he tells her he loves her a whole bunch of times, and then she's like doesn't believe it, but then he keeps saying it and talking about stuff, and she doesn't believe it, and then they kiss, and I guess now she believes it because kissing is magic. I don't know, it's so dumb. And then they're gonna have like a conversation, I guess, or they walk out together, and Garf's there looking pissed, and it's like, sorry for making you waiting, and Garf's like, I'm not here for you, and that's the end of the episode. It's so dumb. So episode 16 here focuses very heavily on Garf. Obviously, we were leading up to this. So anyway, so we have the face-off, and then Subaru well, first we get some flashbacks of Garf like smashing his head into like the graveyard or the trial area, the shrine, at some point, which is where he gets his like cross scar across his head and whatnot. Anyway, so then we go back to like the present. And Amelia and Subaru are standing at the head of the shrine, or at the top of the shrine, and Garf's walking up, and he's talking a lot of shit, and then Subaru starts calling him out and talking about his mom, and how something his mom, and blah, 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 and then Garf starts talking back about his mom, and he just wanted his mom to, like, be happy, and that's why she left, and then he found, like, her cart destroyed after she had left, which means she never made it out of the valley, which is confusing to me, because we later find out that she left when he was, like, a baby, and so, like, years later, he found the cart with her, like, the cart she took that was destroyed. So, like, I guess she was dead because it gets implied by other people that she was dead, but I don't fucking know. Anyway, so then they have a little battle, and Subaru ends up beating Garf utilizing Puck inside a crystal, and then the sloth shadow fist thing that he now has access to, but it's very draining. And then after he beats up Garf a little bit, he's completely drained, and he's like bent over, and he's like, I did it. And the Garf stands up, he's like, fuck you, you didn't do shit. And it's like, ruh-roh. And then Subaru keeps talking this whole time about the magic of friendship, because friendship is magic, right? And Garf's like, fuck your friendship's magic. But then Partouche at the last second comes over and like headbutts Garf super hard, knocking him into a wall, and he passes out. So friendship is magic. Lessons learned. Subaru at that point passes out. When he wakes up, Otto's okay, so he didn't get killed. Amelia's like, he's resting on like the lap pillow of Amelia, so good stuff there. And then and Partouche's there, so they chit-chat, and Partouche's like, stop being such a dumbass and risking your life all the time. And he's like, yeah. And then we see that Garf is using Ram as a lap pillow. And then he wakes up, and then she like taunts him because, you know, he's like in love with her, and tells him to be more of a man and stop being such a bitch and all this stuff. And there's a lot of like chit-chat back and forth. And then at some point, and so then finally like Garf like mans up and decides he's going to go do the trial. So he heads into the trial, and he gets his pass, and he sees his mom leaving. And this is the part where it's like, oh, he's a baby. And then he comes to realize by talking to like Spirit Frederica when she was a little kid that his mom didn't leave because she was trying to find happiness to abandon her children. She was trying to protect her family by going out of the shrine because she was human to find their father, or at least Garf's father, because I think they have different fathers. So that they can be like a family again, and that's why she leaves. So it's not for selfish reasons, and Garf has to come to like terms with that, and finally he does, and then he comes out and he's like a whole new person, and he's super happy, and things are going like great for, you know, as he comes out. And then he's like super nice to everybody and like apologizes and thanks them for like sharing that friendship is magic with them. At that juncture, he starts calling Subaru boss, or I think he's supposed to be calling him like older brother, because someone else makes a comment about like, oh hey, you got a new younger brother, and then Subaru's like, what do you mean younger brother? And I think it's Ram, and then Ram's like, Garf's 14, and he's like, the fuck? And he's like, everything makes sense now. And then Garf's not going to do the rest of the trial because that's Amelia's job, so she's going to start doing it. So then they chit-chat a little bit, and then Amelia goes in, and they talk about their kiss for a second, and then after she leaves, Garf's like, I saw you kissing her, and Subaru gets super embarrassed because Japanese culture. And then inside, Amelia sees like some drawing that Subaru did that like gives encouraging words to her to continue on with like the journey or whatever they're doing. And she's like, Subaru, you're such a dumbass. And then she enters like the dream realm or whatever to finally face like the trial. And then as soon as she gets in there, it's our friend the old witch of greed is standing there, and she's like, look at you pathetic loser. She's like really reams into her, and then really just stands there, and then she's like, you gotta stop being so mean to me. Or at some point she gets called the witch's daughter. So that's interesting because we're doing a lot with like the mom and the relation, so maybe she's the witch's daughter. So anyway, and at that point Amelia's like, you gotta stop being such an asshole to a fellow witch, because I am the frozen witch. And that wraps up episode 16. Time to head into Amelia's little past life situation for the entire episode, plus probably more episodes. Jeez, the show. Anyway, so Amelia is wandering around through forest with the Witch of Greed. God, I don't know, I can't remember names from this fucking show. Probably because I'm checked out while watching it. Whatever her name is, the Witch of Greed. That's all you need to know. And she's like doing other stuff. They talk about how the world's like kind of a dream, but also kind of not a dream. It's like a different world, but it's like they walk around it like they're ghosts or whatever, which is interesting because it's completely different than when Subaru was here and he was living like a real life, right? Even Garfield was more like this, where it was like he's not really engaged with the dream. He's just like seeing stuff from the past. So I don't know why there's a difference. It's not explained. No, it doesn't matter, I guess. Whatever. Anyway, they get to like this little home, and then they head inside, and then we go back in time to when Amelia was like 7 maybe. And then we meet Mother Fontana. Not mother. So we find out that this woman we saw before, who we thought was her mother, or I thought was her mother, is actually her aunt. It is so Amelia's father's sister, who's been raising Amelia because her father and mother are off doing quote-unquote important things. We get no more information in this episode. But what we do get is we get to see Geese. You remember Geese? No? His name, it's Beltegeese. That's right. He's here. Only he's not a crazy sin archbishop. He's just some bro who apparently lives longer than elves. And he's here with like his little group of sinners is what he calls them, and they're just like delivering goods to the elves who got cast off to this forest realm for some unknown reason. So Amelia gets stuck in the house all the time, and she eventually a spirit shows up and shows her how to like sneak out of there. So she sneaks out of there. She sees interactions. There's clearly some romantic stuff going on between Geese and Fantina, the mommy Fantina. And which kind of goes throughout the whole episode of them just kind of like flirting and people pointing it out and stuff. Amelia, there's like not much going on. We get a couple scenes like this. We go back outside for a minute to Garf, Otto, Ram, and Subaru, and Subaru's super embarrassed. So I thought Garf had seen them kiss, but no, that message that he left Amelia inside the training site, the shrine, is a love letter. And so that's what Garf saw. And so Subaru is super embarrassed about that because he, it's like this random dude saw his love letter for the girl he loves before she did. And that's why she was like, "You're so stupid." When she was like in there before, was because it's like a love letter confessing all his stuff that he like carved into the wall, which like that must have taken a long fucking time. But anyway, okay, that makes sense. Anyway, back inside the dream, Amelia and the Witch Agreed talk about the seal. So the seal keeps getting brought up. Is the seal okay? Geist keeps coming to make sure the seal's fine. Yeah, the seal's good. No one's touching it. Everyone's gonna be okay. There's a lot of like cryptic bullshit kind of like swayed around, like a lot of, I don't want to call it like a mystery box because that's some J.J. Abrams bullshit. This is not that. I'm sure we'll get some answers, or we won't because it's based on a light novel and I should just read the fucking book. I know. My bad. I will not because this story is pretty boring. I'm not going to lie. Anyway, so then Amelia gets taken by the fairies to the seal, and the seal is just some like crazy dark looking door with a big a padlock on it that just is like sitting all by itself in like the middle of a glen of the woods. And she tries to like push the door open, nothing happens, and finally she like gives up and starts heading out. And then she runs into Geese, and for some reason Geese really wanted to see her, but I can't see her yet, quote unquote. But then like she bumps into him, and then he like cries tears of joy because his salvation has come, or some crazy nonsense. And she's like, "Don't cry, be fun." And then we get like sometime later, I guess it just like skips ahead, and then they're like playing around, and Fantina's there, and she's like, they have like a very brief conversation about how it was like an accident, and Amelia didn't want to get in trouble, and so she kind of tricked Fantina into coming out and seeing Geese and her, so that because Geese was too much of like a coward to say anything. And then they get to a funny conversation about Geese almost reveals that he's been around for like, I don't know, hundreds of years, that he knew the parents of Amelia, and that Fantina is much younger than him. But then she like shuts him up about it, and then they're all kind of like laughing and talking, and then we found out that Fantina made Amelia promise she would never go to the seal, but she did. So now she's got a like extra promise that she won't do it anymore, because that if you make a promise, you got to like keep your promise and stuff. Oh yeah. Anyway, so then the episode wraps up when we get the Sin Archbishop of Greed, the old white cloak guy from like, I don't know, 7 episodes ago with blonde hair who killed Subaru that one time with the gluttony Sin Archbishop. And he shows up, and then they get to like a funny argument, and then he has like his evil smile, and that wraps up episode 17. So now we turn to a totally different story. Just the show. Right in the middle of the other story, which we will also get to in this episode being 18. All right, so we're back in the shrine, and like the little pink-haired elves have shown up, and everyone's like, "What's going on?" And one of them looks pretty tuckered out. And then something's going to happen there, but she's like, "Oh, I got to tell you guys a story about something that happened to the originator of like the clone pink-haired ladies." And they're like, tell us the story. And so she's like, back in the day, like 400 years ago, before the experiment started and the cloning and all that stuff, she was the pink-haired lady, I don't know her name is. She came to visit the Witch Agreed, and she runs into Beatrice. That's right, Beatrice. And then they have like an argument, and then the Witch Agreed comes out, and she's like, and the Beatrice is like, "Mother, who is this?" And it's like, oh, okay. So apparently Beatrice is the daughter of the Witch Agreed. Now, this show likes to bandy around relationships kind of willy-nilly, and so I don't know exactly what's going on here, because the Witch Agreed calls her Beatrice, and then Beatrice is like, "You're my mother," and then the Witch Agreed says something, and then Beatrice is like, "No, you're my actual mother," and then the Witch Agreed is like, "That's true," and I'm like, is she though? Like the fuck. All right. Anyway, so there's just a lot of like putzing around, and Beatrice and like the elf lady hanging out while the witch of greed is like doing stuff. This all takes place in the sanctuary. The point of this story is to talk about the sanctuary before it got locked down and like what was going on like 400 years ago or whatever. In this episode, it doesn't really get anywhere besides to kind of establish that Beatrice knows this pink-haired chick and that they had some sort of like friendly relationship, even though Beatrice, who is like a cold-hearted, who puts herself out as being like a cold-hearted bitch, is pretending that she doesn't care and doesn't want friends and whatnot, just like she did with Subaru, even though she has a lot of feelings and cares here. All right. So while we're going on about that, all of a sudden, and it's literally all of a sudden, we jump back into Amelia's story. So Amelia, Beltagis, and Fontina are all standing there with the Archbishop, it's like Conti or whatever, the one of, Pride? Anyway, he, and they start gibbering jabbering at each other, and then all of a sudden this other witch shows up, and it's the Witch of Vanity, Pandora, which I don't remember seeing from before. And I'm like, I don't remember Vanity being a seven deadly sin, because we got greed, gluttony, envy, lust. Well, it's not greed, it's avarice, but pride. What are the other two? Anyway, it doesn't matter. Okay, so we have another witch, and she's got like the witch's eyes, which the eyes always look different in witches, which kind of gives it away, but also... And then Fontina like freaks out, and she says something about Amelia's parents, and then it does like some sort of super ice attack on them, and it's like, all right, we did it. And then, of course, she did nothing, because the witch and the Archbishop, Conti, they just like break through the ice, and then Beltagis is like, get out of here, I'll take care of this. And Fontina grabs Amelia and runs off. And then the guy's like, what are you doing? Something. And the Beltagis like pulls out this box, and Conti's like, and the Beltagis, like, it's like the sloth stuff, right? So it's like his unseen hand. So he shoves it into his chest, and then he gets like the unseen hand, and then he starts fighting with Conti a little bit. He eventually gets the shit kicked out of him. But for now, he puts up like sort of a fight. And he's like bleeding from his eyes and all this stuff. And Pandora's like, yay, I love this. And she's like clapping very quietly in the background. Then we head over to Fontina and Amelia back at like their home, and they're both like crying and calling each other like mother and daughter and all this stuff. And Amelia, like who's watching, is like crying, and the Witch of Greed is just kind of standing there bored. And then Archie shows up. I don't know if I mentioned Archie before. He's like the assistant to Fontina, and he's like this blonde-haired elf. And then so they have a conversation, and then she's got to go fight. And then like the witches like minions are here fighting the elves, and the whole thing is to like protect Amelia. And so Archie grabs Amelia and runs off, and then Fontina goes back to Beltagis to help fight. He's pretty turned up. He's got like a cut off arm and all this stuff, and so they like chit chat a little bit, and then Pandora's like, oh good, you're here, we can talk. And then Conti's like, who says I want to talk? I do what I fucking want. And then he like destroys the witch, it looks like, and they're like and so they're like talking a little bit more, and then Conti's like, I'm gonna fucking kill you, I'm so mad. And he's like livid, and his face is very... The best thing about this show by a lot is just the animation is fantastic, because the story is pretty boring. But so then the witch like shows back up, and she like shoves him into the ground in a hole, like very calmly, and she's like, I told you to fucking listen, you asshole, what are you doing? And he starts yelling at her some more, and she's like, then be gone. And then he's just gone. And then the Beltagis' arm is like healed, and like they're like, the fuck? And she's like, I sent him back to his mansion to be with his wives. Okay. And they're like, oh my gosh, something. And she's like, now we can talk. And they're like, and then instead of talking, they're like, all right, let's do this. We'll fight her. And then we go back to Archie carrying Amelia, and they're running through the forest. And then he gets like zapped on his leg by like the black serpent. That's right, the black serpent. If you don't remember the black serpent, I barely remember the black serpent, because it's come up. It's like there's the white rabbits, the white whale, and the black serpent are all Greed's like minions or whatever that she created to like... She's got some sort of like crazy reason why she created all this stuff, to like create food and to create something and to help people not be hungry anymore or something. Like all the witches have like very kind of skewed logic when it comes to like the things they did to like accomplish their sins or whatever. Because the white rabbit, the whole thing was like, oh, they reproduce so that people always have food to eat, and yada yada yada. And it's like, and also they will kill everybody because they love to eat as well. It's like, what the fuck? All right, and so and so he's like, Amelia, run through the field of white flowers over there and keep going. And she's like, okay. And so she runs off, and then the guy starts to be consumed with like some sort of fiery magic, and he's like, I will protect you, I will do something. And then that's the last we see of him for now. And then the last thing we get in this episode is Amelia runs up to like, or she's like kind of lost a little bit, it seems, and then she finds the doorway, which is like the seal or whatever. And she is like, there's like this weird moped guy. I'll just go straight. Sorry. And so she follows the spirits lead her back to the door. And when she gets there, Pandora's just standing there like, oh, good, you came. That wraps up episode 18. So we get baby Amelia. She's standing there. The witch is there. Yeah, the witch shows up, and they have a little cute conversation about how Amelia's got the key, and Amelia's like, I don't have the key. And then the witch is like, okay, I'll just tear the whole forest apart. And she's like, wait, I might have the key. I don't know. And so then the witch advises her to, like, Pandora advises her to, like, imagine she has the key. And so she does, and then she does. And then she's like, okay. And then she's like, you promised to leave and leave us alone and not do anything is when I release the seal. And then the Pandora's like, yeah, I promise, absolutely. And I trust her because I actually trust the witches in the show. Because they're creepy as shit, but they tend to keep their word. So the Amelia walks up, but then at the last second she's like, no, I won't do it. Blah, 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 blah. And then the witch Vanity comes up and she's like, come on, just do it. You know, save all your friends and family and whatnot. And then Fontuna shows up and she's like, no. And so she kills her a bunch of times, but it doesn't mean anything to Pandora because what a YOLO, I guess. And at that point, let's see, they get into like a conversation, and Pandora's like, hey, she kept a promise to you, but I want you to break that promise, because if you break that promise, I'll leave everyone alone and do whatever, and that way, or let you break the promise. She says she doesn't have to do the promise anymore. That way Amelia doesn't have to break the promise, and yada, yada, yada. And they kind of talk about Amelia's parents a little bit. Like, they talk around Amelia's parents a lot in the show. And so at that juncture, Fontina is holding Amelia and saying she's glad and she wants her to keep keeping the promise and all this stuff. And then Geese shows up. And Geese is all like blurry-eyed from his like bloody eyes and his like powers and like going crazy or whatever. And then he kind of gets like tricked somewhat, it seems. Maybe not tricked, because there's like a point where Fontina's like killing Pandora, and then at some point she pretends to be Amelia right when she gets killed, and then Fontina like freaks out, and then Fontina sees that Amelia's just like standing by the gate watching her because the Witch of Vanity can like do that, I guess. Anyway, so Geese comes up, and then he thinks that he's attacking the Witch of Vanity, and he uses his powers and he kills Fontina, and then he's like, no, and he completely breaks down, and this is how he becomes like super crazy. And this is the first time he starts being like, I know, like that, his whole thing where he says things a bunch of times, he starts going crazy and whatnot. And then Fontina and Amelia have like I love you, no, I love you more, no, I love you to the moon, I love you to the moon and back, right, conversation. And then Amelia like freaks out because the Pandora's like, oh, now you can, she's dead, so you don't have to keep her promise anymore. And then Amelia's like, no, die! And then Amelia starts using her, like, super ice powers to, like, kill Pandora, or attack, pretty much kill Pandora's, like, presentation here, like, again and again and again and again. And then eventually the whole forest gets, like, frozen over, and then Amelia gets turned into, like, that crystal from the movie that Puck finds later. And then Pandora's like, well, I hope when you wake up, you won't be so mad at me. In fact, I'm going to take away all these memories so you forget, so you can not be angry. So that way maybe we can figure this fucking unleashing the seal thing and go on with her day. And Amelia's like, and then she turns in the crystal, think it's frozen over, and right before she kind of fades off, we see Pandora say something to Geese, and then he like walks off laughing, like in his craziness. And then we go to Witch Agreed and like modern day Amelia, and they're standing there and they're talking, and they talk back and forth about how she accepted her past, and she's going to accept the past because she's going to like push to the future, and she's going to free all her friends and family and show them the beautiful world, and just a lot of bullshit like that. Oh, Lord. At that juncture, she passes the test and gets told she has 2 more tests. Amelia's like, oh, no. And then she gets sent back to, like, the shrine. And then she has a little cry by herself. And she's like, oh, Mother Fontina, I'm so sad. Something. And then we head back out to Subaru, Garf, Otto, and the little pink elves. And they are like, okay. And Ram's also there. And the Subaru's like, okay, I think I got it. That all makes sense. And I'm like, the fuck makes sense? Like, we didn't learn anything. But he's like, all right, she looks like she needs some rest. Ram, go with them and figure that out. And then Garf, you come with us. And so then Garf, Otto, and Subaru head over to Roswell, where Ram helps the other pink elf help the pink elf that's sad, or not sad, just tired, somewhere else. And then while they're walking, Subaru mentions he wanted Ram out of there because Ram's like a chaotic figure in this whole scenario, because like he's not really loyal to Subaru, but he's not loyal. So, but you know, she's loyal to Roswell, but she has shown some deference to Subaru. So who knows what's going to go on with that? Then the what happens next? And so then they hit Roswell up. He's like standing and dressed with his clown makeup and stuff, and they have a conversation about what's going on. And Subaru at some point mentions that he knows. Oh, he introduces Otto, and Otto's not part of like the prophecy in the book that Roswell has, and he's like very confused why he's there. And then Subaru's like, "That's why I know I'm going to win, because I already broke the prophecy, and this guy is here. He's a chaotic element in your whole scheme of things, and I'm here to ask you to surrender so that we can stop doing this bullshit stuff, because I already won." And I know I won because I know why the sanctuary was created, and I'm going to tell everyone why in episode 19, which is next. All right, wait, is this episode 19? This is episode 19, and episode 20, which is next. So here we go. Episode 20 focuses on the creation of the barrier for the sanctuary, the creation of the sanctuary, but not really. So, so we get a little black and white moment of Roswell when he's like dying of like his menstruation thing, his like period or whatever, and then Echidna comes in and like kisses him real good so that he falls in love with her forever, for realsies, and then sucks some of his mana out so that he doesn't like die or whatever, and then she helps him like overcome and take over his families, and then we go like forward in time to like the present of the recap of the shrine thing, the story that the pink-haired lady like told everybody, because now Subaru's recalling it to Roswell for our sake, which is terrible writing. Anyway, so we find out Beatrice is there, and Roswell's there, and pink-haired lady's there, and Echidna's there. Echidna's the witch agreed. They said her name like 15 times, so now I remember again. But so they're all chit-chatting and laughing and joking around with each other and teasing each other, and Roswell's in love with Echidna, and Beatrice doesn't like it, and then pink-haired lady is like, oh, something, and then at some point they're like fucking around by a river, and pink-haired lady can't like read, but Beatrice promised that she would teach her how to read at some point. And then Beatrice and Roswell, and they'll get summoned by Echidna because he's coming. And who's he? He is the Archbishop of Misery, or I don't know if they said Archbishop. He's some sort of devil of, yeah, it was Misery, right? Yeah, something like that. Anyway, he's got like a blue aura, and he just looks sad eponymous about everything, and he's trunking around. And so they talk about the barrier, and they're building the barrier to stop this guy because he's here for reasons that, again, are not fully explained, which I love how the show does that. Just keeps introducing random bullshit and doesn't explain any of it until like never sometimes. It's just okay. And so Roswell's going to go stop him while Echidna finishes the spell, and then Beatrice is going to take pink-haired lady to go like complete the spell. So Echidna's gonna like set up the spell, I guess. Okay, so then we switch over to Roswell getting his ass handed to him by the Misery guy and almost getting killed, and then Echidna shows up, and then over at the house, Beatrice is like, hey, pink-haired lady, we gotta go. Mother has something for you. And they go to the crystal room because she's gonna be the core. They had a conversation with us earlier about how the one thing they're missing is a core, and then pink-haired lady's like, well, can't I be the core? And they're like, yeah, actually you can. And we don't want to make you do that. We'll figure something else out. And she's like, no, you've made me so happy. I was rejected by everyone, and like you saved my life, but give me a home for a short period of time. I'll do anything to like protect this home, blah, 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 blah. And so then she has like the exact same conversation with Beatrice at the crystal, because Beatrice was never informed about like what was going on with her being the core or whatever, and they're like best friends forever. And so they have like a little, friendship cry moment and all that stuff. And then she goes to like become the core. And then we switch back to the actual present with Subaru, Garf, Otto having an argument with Roswell, and then Roswell and Subaru have like a cry off. It's not really a cry off. They get very emotional about the women they love and about the things, because Roswell's still in love with Echidna, and obviously Subaru's in love with Amelia. And Roswell's motivations for doing things once again change completely based on what he's previously said. So from what I've never read the manga, or I don't know if there's a manga. I've never read the light novel, so I don't know anything about that shit. I've only watched these shows and the movies. And so what I understand about what's happening in this show is that Roswell is taking care of Amelia. He like went and tracked her down because he wants her to be the queen because it'll give him power. But then later on, he wants to do it to like help Amelia because the witches were like done dirty or something. And then now his motivation is to punish Amelia, so that it's to get her the ire of all the people, so that she'll be persecuted because she's related. She's a descendant like the Witch of Envy or something. And I'm like, okay. I can't tell if this guy's a good guy or a bad guy or what. Anyway, so Subaru, and then at some point Roswell calls Garf out for switching sides so easily, and then Garf's like, you don't know shit about me, bro. You just treat me like garbage, and this guy treats me well, and plus I face my past, and I made a decision. And Subaru's like, yeah, that's right, and Roswell's like, pathetic. And I'm like, you're pathetic. you simp. Like, the fuck are you talking to call people pathetic for? You're like, go fuck yourself. And so he refuses to like join Subaru's team or to give up, so they all like kind of storm off. And then we switch back over to Amelia, and she's like, all right, I've had a good cry, time to go. And instead of going to the next trial, she just like walks out. And in my head, I was like, don't they have like a 3-day time limit to complete this task? And hasn't it been like 2 days? Maybe it's only been a day, but still. All right, whatever. And so she walks out, and then Ram's there, and the episode ends. And I'm like, okie dokie. So Subaru finally addressed the fact that it's been a few days and they need to get the fuck out of here because they got to go to the mansion to rescue their friends. And so we find out that Garf, he could have left this whole time. Cool. So he's going to drag Otto and Subaru super fast back over to the mansion to save everybody. And they're like, all right. And then they talk to Ram for a little bit. And then, so we go from there. So then Ram's waiting for Amelia. Amelia comes out. They talk. Ram makes Amelia promise that, or essentially Ram swears fealty to Amelia specifically and asks her to help destroy the delusions that Roswell has, because he has like this goal and this dream, but then it's been corrupted with like delusions. They keep calling it delusions. Okay. Anyway, so... Roswell shows up. He heard the whole thing. Him and Amelia go back and forth. Roswell's being a real asshole. And then finally Amelia's like, whatever, I'm going to go take care of this trial. Adios. And so she heads inside to go to the next part of the trial while Rem and Roswell talk. And there's like some more shenanigans there with like, oh, he was watching her the whole time and she's putting on an act. And she's like, I'm not putting on an act. And he's like, what are you going to do? And she's like, what do you need me to do? And he's like, stay here. And then we get like, before, when Otto was asking for help with Garf, like, I don't know, a day or two ago in the show, that she was like, I need 3 requests. And the requests were like, I don't remember. The third request is the most important request, though. It was like, help me, or let me defeat Garf because I want to knock him down a peg. Then there was like something else about something, and Otto's like, I can't do that, but Subaru will take care of it, like taking care of Amelia or something. And then the third request was like mystery. And so then we see her approach the crystal area, and Roswell's in there doing something to the big crystal where the pink-haired lady's being held. And then him and Ram have like a conversation. She's got a wand, and then they talk about a lot of cryptic bullshit, to be completely honest. Just like, oh, you knew this was going to happen. Oh, I did this. Oh, why didn't you do this? Oh, you're mine. And then the important thing is we find out that Roswell is the one who like destroyed the demon village and cut off Ram's horn originally. So that whole crazy story she told, that was all Roswell because, I don't know, crazy reasons. And then she tells him she's going to stop him, and then he says something about how he's going to summon winter. So he summons winter by using this crystal with all the mana energy to bring the rabbits to kill everybody, right? But he was saying that he would have used like a lot of mana, so the best way to have like beaten him would have been wait till he started doing that. And she's like, I don't want that. I want like you at your full power. And they go back and forth about that. A lot of it is pretty boring, I'm not gonna lie. It's just like a lot of prattle back and forth. It's not even like hype like shown in anime battle. It's just, or prattle. It's just like blah 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 blah. Oh yeah, blah 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 blah. Oh yeah, blah 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 blah. And then he's like, all right, well, let's do this. So then he starts like casting spells in both hands. And then she's like, I brought a friend. Or he's like, you think you're really gonna beat me by yourself? And she's like, no, that's why I brought my friend. And it's dun to dun. It's Puck. Hell yeah. So Puck's like, hey, what's up, homie? We're ready to continue where we left off, because if you remember, they like fought each other to a standstill, but now they have Ram. So Ram's gonna be like the deciding factor, I guess. Anyway, so they start their battle. It goes, and then we head over to the mansion. I know a lot of shit happens in this episode. We head over to the mansion, and it's Petra, and she's running, and she's like, no, I can't leave, I gotta get Ram. And so she turns around, and then it's like, uh-oh, it's the bowel hunter, ruh-roh. And then she's gonna like slice up Petra and eat her bowels or some crazy shit, whatever the lunatic does, when Frederica shows up, and like she's like, go, get out of here, run. And so then she starts fighting her, and then Petra like runs away. And she's like crying and wishes that Subaru was there. And he's like, "What up? I'm here." And she's got to go back and help Frederica. And he's like, "No, I brought like a, what do you call it in baseball? A ringer." He's like, I brought like an aggressive ringer, and he's gonna go take care of that business for us. And you and me are gonna go, I don't know, do something else." So they go find Beatrice, and then tell Beatrice they're gonna drag her out of there, whether she wants to or not. Meanwhile, Frederica's getting kind of beat up, and then Garf shows up, and he's got like his like shield. Gauntlets. Oh, I didn't say it before. He has like shield gauntlets that he had from somewhere that him and Frederica used to play with his kid. He's wearing. And so he starts talking shit, calling the bow hunter like a bitch, "You dumb black bitch," all this stuff. And then the bow hunter's like, "Oh yeah, fuck you. What are you gonna do? I'm gonna eat your insides." And like they both have like creepy smiles at each other. And then that'd be awesome. I'd love to see that fight, but we'll probably just see like the bare minimum out of it because the show is kind of boring. Anyway. We continue to fight with Garf and the bow hunter lady. It's all right. I came to the revelation during this episode, which is episode 23, I think 22, that this is not like a shonen anime at all. Like, I feel like I was sold a bill of goods to not get qualified. It's not much of like an isekai anime either, to be completely honest. Like it is, because it's literally another world. Like this guy got trapped in another world, but like I don't know. I still feel like, I mean, he was super essential in like the first season, so the first couple of arcs. But at this juncture, it's like he just kind of like exists, and then other people are doing stuff, and like yeah, he's essential because he's the main character, but he's almost like, I don't know, man. It's not that Subaru is not. He's kind of not a likable character in my opinion. I don't know if he's not likable as in he's not likable for me, and not in that he is a bad character or that he's like unlikable, but more just like I do not care about him at all. Like there's something about him that like strikes me as like, this is awesome. And then I think I'm like, this is like a popular fight novel at least, right? Or a popular anime or something. Like I don't get it. It's not good. Like it's very mediocre. And like, okay, so if I'm watching bullshit here in America for the last like 15 years, and then I watch this, I would be like, wow, what a revelation. This is an incredible show. And I haven't done this in a while, but like literally at this point, it's like if we're talking all media in the last like 10 years that I've consumed, or not even I've consumed. If you're just comparing it to like the Western trash, slop, I guess is the word these days, that this is like easily like an 8 out of 10. But if I'm just comparing it to like anime I've watched over the last couple of years, or just like anime in general, like even trash anime recently, I'm just like, it's fine. Like it's like a 5. Like it's like I'm watching this and I'm kind of bored and I'm like following along, and then they bring stuff up and they don't really resolve it, or they talk about things and then they like talk the opposite of things later. I'm like, I don't know, man. It's really not that well put together of a show. And it's just like, it's every episode is like, oh, is this where they're going to have like their heartfelt talk again for like the 45th time? Like, holy shit, man. Can you do something else? Can you resolve something? Like, I feel like this arc has been dragging on and it's so uninteresting. And then it's just like the whiplash between like how characters act in certain situations. Like Echidna is like a totally different person every time she comes on the screen. And I don't know, is that supposed to be, is that like her character? Is that how she's supposed to be? Because she wasn't like that every time. So then it's just confusing. And then like, I don't know, Subaru is just like so bad at getting his point across that it's become like comical. Like he's like talking to Beatrice in this episode. Oh, so there's a battle with Garf and the lady. It just, oh, and then she's terrible. Like that Bell Hunter lady is like such she's just like an overpowered thing for no reason, like no explanation. No, like it's not like I'm scared, because there's no way she's gonna win at the end of the day. And then she's been beaten like twice at this point, and now she's back for a third time. Like, am I supposed to be impressed? Like, the fuck, man. Like, she's not an impressive villain at all. Like, I feel no fear, no concern for the characters. Like, and then you have like this little kid who summons monsters. She shows back up here again, and I feel the same way. It's just like, oh, it's that dumb bitch again. Like, okay, well, they'll probably win. Like. You know, and it's like, oh, they're gonna win because it's Dragon Ball and Goku always wins, but I get hyped about it, you know, because it's like well written and acted and stuff like this. Everyone in the show seems kind of bored of these characters. Like Garf's like fighting, and maybe it's better in the Japanese, but since I'm like, you know, watching these while I drive my car or like working on stuff at work, like notes, that I need like the English so that I can understand what's happening, because I don't have the time to like sit and actually enjoy like the natural voices of the Japanese actors and try to like pay attention to the subtitles and whatnot. So maybe it's better in that, but it's just the voice acting again. It's not bad, as in it's like, oh, this is bad, but it's just like again, I don't know if it's the direction or the writing or the voice acting, but like none of the characters seem to care about anything ever. Like they're all very boring sounding. And there's a whole scene here. So we have a whole scene with like Subaru trying to do the Subaru thing where he just like talks to people with like his heart and tries to very poorly like get across to them like his feelings or whatever with Bianca, or no, not Bianca, what's her name? Beatrice. And she like rejects him like they always do. Like it's like I'm watching him talk to Beatrice, and I'm like, oh, she's gonna kick him out because he's gonna say something that upsets her, and then it happens, and I'm like, yep, it happened. That's like the 15th time this happened in the show. Like, it's can we do something else? Like we're like at the end of the second season, and like we're doing the same stuff we were doing at the very beginning of the first season. Like there's been like no character growth whatsoever, and there has, like, I'm not saying there's not, because you have Subaru is not so much of like a little bitch like a Shinji Ikari that he was early in like the first season or even beginning of this season, but at the same time now it's almost like worse because he's just so boring. Like there's like nothing to him. He's just like a Barry Sue essentially. He's just like has wisdom and like makes the right choices, and there's no like the resurrection thing hasn't come up in like, I don't goddamn know, like 20 episodes. Like what is the point of this show? Like he has no powers, no abilities. He can just like die and come back, but that really hasn't been a point in forever, right? And so I'm like, what am I watching? It's just like some very boring like fantasy anime. And the world's not even like interesting. Like the witch thing was interesting. Like for the brief like 4 episodes we had when he was like talking to the witches and doing all that crazy witch stuff, and that was coming up, and then like the mystery of like the white rabbits and stuff. But after that, it's just been like, okay, well, they're gonna execute on this plan, and then every episode is like they execute on like a very tiny portion, and then we jump around so much. So after the Gar fight, then we run into like the lady with the little kid with the summoning magic, and then Frederica fights her, and then Subaru takes Petra and Otto and Rem, and they try to go find Roswell's like secret chamber so they can escape, and then they run into like this Ma beast, the witch beast that is immune to like the crystal or whatever, and then we get like a very brief shot of like Ram fighting Roswell with Puck, and then we spend most of the rest of the episode with Amelia while she's doing like the present that could have been, and it's like it's really boring and it's super long. It could have been like a minute, but it was like 10 minutes of like half the fucking episode of just her like, oh look, Mother Fontana's okay and Geis is okay, and they have like a relationship, and she's a teenager now like she is in the show. Like she's supposed to be like 17 or something. I think she's supposed to be younger, like maybe 16, because I think she's younger than Subaru, and Subaru's supposed to be 17. Anyway, and so they're just hanging out and having a good time and having a picnic, and then she's like cries a little bit, and then she's like, all right, time to go, that I need to, and then like she has a talk with like Echidna essentially, who's in the form of Archie, who's like the blonde elf who helped her before, and they have like they have a whole like a super long conversation for about like, when I say super long, it was like more than 30 seconds, which is all it needed to be, about how she's like ready to accept like this is not the present that is real, and that she wants to live in reality, right? And then Echidna's like, I hate you so much, and I'm like, god damn, what in the fuck? And then she comes back out, and then I was like, okay, cool, now she can finally go to the future, and like, au contraire, we're gonna spend the last like 4 or 5 minutes of this episode with her just like getting glad-handed by all the people in the village and all the people from like the human village, and then like what's her name, the pink elder lady, the little elf chick, and then Amelia being like, oh, you guys you make me so happy, and everyone's like, yay, and she's like, I'm gonna go finish up, and then she goes to like finish up, and that's the end of the episode, and I was like, holy shit, that was so boring. Like, the fuck did I just watch? Oh god. Okay, 3 more episodes. Here we go. And this brings us to episode 23, which, holy shit, actually was kind of entertaining. It only took 23 fucking episodes of this season. Now, some of the witch stuff was kind of interesting, and that's why this was kind of interesting as well. So we start off... Where do we start off? I'm trying to remember. Anyway, let's start with this. So we start with Subaru and the crew, and they are fighting that mob beast, and they do some random stuff, and eventually they get him in a situation where they throw a bunch of oil on him and light him on fire, and then he jumps through the window and crashes down to the ground and dies, and they're like, yeah. And then they have a little chit-chat about running away, and then Subaru hands Rem over to Otto and says, take her and Petra and get on Roswell's like secret escape route and go. He has to go take care of Beatrice, and then he says some crazy stupid Subaru bullshit and heads off to take care of that. Meanwhile, over in Amelia Land, she is entering the future thing. And so she goes into like the possible futures, and you just see a bunch of stars flying by and a lot of people talking gibberish, and she's able to like press through. And then when she presses through, she wakes up in like Echidna's garden with the tea party, and then she's like Echidna, and then the Witch of Wrath, which I don't recall her name because it doesn't come up in this episode, puts like her hand, like a handgun to her head and says, "Don't turn around." And then they have a conversation about her completing and about the futures and the possible futures, and how Amelia believes that she can find like the good futures because the possible futures aren't the guaranteed future, right? Which is true. And how she can't do it by herself, but she's got her friends, and she relies on her friends. She trusts her friends. And then at some point she like turns around, and then her and Wrath like hug it out, and Wrath is like crying and stuff, and then she says something about her mother, but then Amelia's like, "Tell me about my mother," and then the Wrath is like, "I can't," and Amelia's like, "I understand, there's things you want to talk about but you can't talk about, so don't worry about it." And then Wrath is like, "There's a door, go through that door and head straight forward and you'll complete the trial." So they say goodbye, and then she does. Oh, and before she leaves, Amelia's like, "Tell Echidna I'd love to have a tea party, a grand tea party with all you and all the witches someday." And Wrath is like, "I'll drag her to it." So then Amelia goes back to like the real world. Sorry. Jeez. And heads into the next room, and there's like, she says something about like, "Oh, I thought this would be Echidna, but it's not," and we don't get a good look at her. We just see like the kind of butterfly clip that she has in her hair and like her cloak or whatever. You know, there's a bunch of like magical lines coming from her, so then Amelia uses some sort of magical punch and like shatters the casket so that the magic ends, and she's like, "Therefore the barrier is over." And she heads outside, and it's like, "Hey everyone," and no one's there, but there's like a snowstorm. And then we skip. When do we skip? Oh, at some point, I think it's after this, we skip over back to the mansion, and then we get like the only good part of the show for the whole season. It begins here, and it begins with Garf and the bow lady like fighting, and she keeps recovering and healing, and he's fighting her, and there's like fire going on all around him. And then at some point, like the mob beast comes flying in, and it's the other girl, the little girl, and then Frederica comes in, and then there's like a fucking hype shonen animes moment where they like face off, and it's Garf and then the lady, and they're like, "We got this." And then the little girl starts sending like some mobbies after her, and Frederica takes care of them. And then at some point she sends like she's like a giant hippopotamus, and Garf like kills the shit out of it, like picks it up, turns into his like tiger giant form, rips its head off, and dumps it on the ground or whatever. And then the bow hunter lady, he calls her out as like a vampire, and she's like, "How did you know?" And he's like, "I read some books sometimes." And I was like, "Can we just have this show?" Fucking Garf, man. I'm hyped. That's the hype the first time I've been this whole fucking season. And so she like tells her life story, and at some point Garf's like, "I don't give a fuck about this. Why are you telling me this?" And I was like, preach. But apparently she like grew up, and she was like an orphan in like a northern area with lots of snow, and it was always cold, and some guy tried to rape her, and she grabbed like a piece of glass and like cut his bowels open and then like ate them and became a vampire or something. But Garf makes some comment about how like one of the witches was a vampire and she's dead, so she can definitely kill this woman too. And so they fight some more, and then the little girl gets like killed, it looks like, and Frederica grabs her and like runs out the window with her, and then the bow hunter's about to go, and the Garf's like and beats the shit out of her some more, and then he picks up like the giant hippopotamus, and they have a moment. They have like a sex moment, but it's not real sex. It's like they're biting each other on the neck, like sucking each other's blood or whatever. He's like gnawing into her neck, and she's biting his shoulder, and it's like, the fuck is happening? And then he jumps back, and then she's like smiling and licking her lips, and then he picks up the fucking giant hippopotamus and like goes to like crush her with it, and she's like, "Huh." And then it looks like he splatters the shit out of her, so she's dead now? Because how do you recover from that? I don't know. Maybe she does. Anyway, so that was super hype. And I was fuck yeah. I was like, hell yeah, man. I got like 5 minutes of like excellence in this entire fucking season. Like I'm definitely, it's not enough to like woo me over to like watch the third season, which is supposedly coming out soon, I think. But yeah, there you go. But then we get more hype, and I was like, oh, hell yeah. Because what happens next is we go over to the Roswell Ram. Yes, Ram. I think it's Ram and Puck fight, and then it's like a hype anime magic fight, so that's fucking cool. It's like wind magic and ice magic and fire magic, and they're going back and forth. And then at some point, they kind of get Roswell on the back feet, and then Ram's like, I have something to tell you. And he's like, what, Nani desu ka? And she's like, I love you. And he's like, oh, don't use those words on me. And it's like, he's like, no. She's like, no, I truly love you. And he's like, no, you swore vengeance against me. You said you would kill me because I destroyed you, and I cut off your horde, and I killed your family. And she's like, that's what I wanted to do at first, but now I want to be with you. I love you. Yada, yada, yada. And he's like, oh, I can't believe it. And then Puck turns like really big and like shoots him with a bunch of ice magic, and he shoots him with fire magic, and then Ram like does like an attack against him, and he hits her like real fucking hard and knocks her down. But then she like holds up the book that he's holding on to. That's like the book. I don't know if I've even talked about this fucking book like a single time because it was so uninteresting. But apparently he bases his like whole life on this book, and it was given to him by Echidna, I guess. I don't know. I never felt like we got like a firm confirmation like where the fuck this thing came from. Anyway. So he's like super distraught about it because it's like his whole life is guided by this book, and it's like Beatrice has like the other version of the book. It's like the Gospels, right, that give information. And then he's like freaking out, and he's like running at her with like he's like super concerned, and then she just takes the book and throws it in the fire, and then he casts like some giant like meteor style like fireball spell, and right before it hits Ram, it looked like to me, even though it was very dark, and I had this on my card, I'm like kind of like watching it in the periphery, that Puck or something grabs Ram, or either she jumps out of the way or Puck grabs her and like flies out of the way, but there's like this giant huge explosion, and it's like boom, and then credits roll, and I was like, this is like an end of season credits. There's 2 more episodes in this fucking season. What the fuck are you doing, anime? It's one of those things where it's like, well, the last 10 minutes of this fucking episode of this season were super awesome. I wish the rest of the season would have been like that. Then I might actually care to watch this show ever again. But unless it continues and it, like the people who make this show have learned like a valuable lesson about keeping my interest, then we will not be continuing onward. But we're gonna find out right now. All right, so we pick up with Amelia coming out and finding all the people out there, and they're snowstorming. She's like, what's going on? And they were like, I thought you did this. They're like, what? And then they mentioned something about a great spirit, which is Puck. And then she sees like this crystal, and she's like, touches it, and she's like, okay. And then she looks off in the distance, and there's like this ice tower, and she's like, all right, everybody get inside the graveyard, which is where the test takes place, and hide out, and I'll be back. And then you, the guy who questioned me earlier, you're in charge. And he's like, yes, ma'am. And so they all head in there, and then she runs off to this place that like dissolves. She goes inside. It's all the pink-haired clones, and then the main pink-haired clone lady, and they have like a conversation that was like a little bit hard to follow, not gonna lie. Like something about, because it was a lot of vagarities. It was like, I have to do what I'm supposed to do, and then Amelia's like, I understand, and I'm like, I don't understand what. And then they just move on, and it's like, oh, the original ReZero or whatever her name is, she was here established for the barrier, but now that you've destroyed the barrier, I have to do the thing with the barrier, and then it's gonna like not protect the thing and something, and now I have to do my thing. And then one of the like ReZero clones is like, no, and then Amelia's like, it's okay, I'll take care of it. And then she's like, thanks. And then she touches the crystal, and and she disappears along with the crystal. And then the other ReZeros are like, she's like, all right, go to the graveyard. Also, have you seen Roswell? And, well, no, she doesn't say go to graveyard. She's like, you know where Roswell and Ram are? And they're like, yes. So they head over there, and like meanwhile, while that's going on, Roswell's just like holding Ram and thinking about everything and about how she loves her, and she's like alive but like dying. And so he's like doing that weird thing he did earlier where he like infuses her horn with like magical power to keep her alive or whatever. And so Amelia runs up, and Roswell's just like, he's like a selective mutism, and she goes in this whole like speech about caring and taking care of them, and like forcing Roswell to like man it up or whatever. And then finally they get attacked by like the white rabbits, and so she's like, I'll take care of this, you take Roswell and Ram and go to all the ReZeros that are there. And then she creates like a path for them to go, and then she starts battling the rabbits, and I was like, hype. And then we immediately leave that to go do some more talking and crying. And I was like, fuck this show. Damn it. Because I was like, oh yeah, here we go, Ice Witch versus deadly rabbits that propagate. And then nope. So meanwhile, while that's all going on, we just get some shots of like Otto with out in the village with like Rem and Petra, and they're like watching the fire, and then Frederica and Garf and the one girl, I think the vampire girl is like dead, because it was like real quick and it was dark, and I'm driving my car, and so I see like somebody on the ground who doesn't look dead, and I think that's the girl who summons like the little girl. And so they're like watching the fire, and then inside Subaru's like running around, and we get like Beatrice just like thinking about shit and about her purpose in life and like crying and thinking about how she's stuck here for 400 years, and she recalls like her mother, the Echidna, was like, oh hey, why I'm gonna have you make like a forbidden library and keep it in Roswell's place and just like help out, and then someday someone's gonna come and they're gonna need access to like the information from the library, and that'll be the person. And she's like, okay, I'll do that, mother, thank you. And so she does that, and then she recalls how like Roswell, the lover of Echidna, like came back, or apparently there's like clones of Roswell too, because she talks about how this is like the most important like lore aspect, is that she's like, oh, Roswell came back, and then we like read books together, and then like the next Roswell came, and each Roswell like inherited from like the last Roswell, and I'm like, what the fuck show? So I'm assuming it's some sort of like cloning magic, like what they did with ReZero, and that this current iteration of Roswell is just like an extension of that, I guess. I don't know. It doesn't seem lore consistent with like everything else that's gone on the show at this juncture, but that's my like vague like, okay, well maybe that's what happened. At some point we get like a recall of like, oh yeah, sorry, when back with Roswell, when he's like recalling stuff, he recalls Puck saying to him like, oh, I'm very impressed you inscribed that spell like on me before this battle started, so like that's what caused the winter. And he's like, I gotta go stop it. So he goes to stop it, and then when when Amelia goes to get to ReZero, they give her a crystal with like Puck in it, because he's all tuckered out from using his magic to like slow down the snow so that she could come out of the trial to like defeat the white rabbits. Okay, so sorry, I forgot about that. Okay, so anyway, back to the fire. So finally Subaru like walks in, he gets thrown out, walks in, gets thrown out. He walks in again, he holds onto the door, they have a conversation. She cries and yells and cries and yells and cries and yells and cries and yells. And I say it that many times because it felt like fucking forever, because it was at least like 5 minutes of this. And I was like, oh, goddamn, what the fuck? And so that goes on forever. And then finally she like creates some sort of like void rift and sends him outside the mansion. And then the whole place is like completely burnt down. And he runs inside and he's trying to find a door because it sounds like she's just going to like suicide herself. But then finally he gets to like Roswell's like secret chamber, because it's like the last door in the manor, and he shuts it, and it's like there's tons of fire, and he's about to like open it up, and he's like, Beatrice, listen to me. If you don't let me come into your library one more time, this is going to kill me. And so that's your choice. If you can let me die, or you're going to let me come talk to you some more. And so he's like, here we go. And he opens the door, and it's Beatrice, and the library is like on fire this time. And they have like another like 5 minutes of like bullshit talk. And finally she like accepts that despite him being human and her being like essentially immortal, that they can be friends for now, and that they'll be such good friends that they'll remember each other. She'll remember him long after he's dead and all this stuff. And she's like, okay. And then the whole library collapses, and then there's like, we go out to like the people who are watching the mansion burn down, and we see like this pink light, and it just zooms out of the mansion, and then like the credits start to roll, and we get like the closing like anime song, and then we go back to like Amelia, and she is standing, and there's like the whole place is surrounded. She's at the graveyard, and the whole place is surrounded by white rabbits, and she's like, fuck. And then all the people are like watching, and she's like, all right, I gotta do this. And so she's about to cast her spell, and then the pink light shows up, and Subaru's like, we got your help, Amelia, don't worry about it, take a break. And she's like, what? And then we see Subaru holding Beatrice's hand, and he's like, all right, Beatrice, let's do this. And she's like, well, I warned you this won't be easy. And that's the end of that episode. We got one episode left. Thank you, God. All right, the final episode. We get a little more hype here, and then just a lot of boring talk that I don't really care about. So we start off facing the white rabbits, and then we get a super badass like fight with Beatrice, who casts these like crystals that turn the rabbits into crystals and shatter them, and then she gives some of that power over to Subaru, or helps him unlock his power, or they like work together using their mana or something. I don't know. They do some trickery, and then he's able to do it too, and they're blasting the shit out of him, but there's like unlimited amounts, right? So they gotta like pin them in and then destroy them for good. Which they end up not doing, which is odd. Anyway, so they do this funny thing where Subaru runs around in a big square where the rabbits just kind of watch him. I mean, it was cool. It was stupid, because like, why are they just watching? He even yells at them. He's like, you rabbits gonna chase me around? And it's like, nope, they're just gonna stand there like dumb fucks. Anyway, and then he gets Amelia to do some other magic to like seal up like the prison he created with the crystals, and then Beatrice sends them all to like a different dimension, kind of like the forbidden library with like no exit out. And I guess that's so they can come back later if the writer decides that needs to happen. I don't know why they did just destroy them when they had the opportunity at this point, but destroying them I guess was too much work or something. I don't know. It's stupid. It fucking doesn't make any sense. Anyway, so at that point everyone kind of rectifies stuff. So Ram's okay, of course she is. And so then we get a scene where everyone's like we get a scene. What happens first? I'm sorry, I checked out like twice in this episode, so I'm trying to remember. So there's like a scene with Subaru and Roswell, and they're talking about his redemption and him joining forces with Subaru or something. And then there's another scene with everybody who's been like damaged. Oh no, there's a scene with Beatrice and Roswell where they're standing over Echidna's grave and they're talking about stuff. And then I guess like all these Roswells that kept coming back were just like the same Roswell, because Roswell would like, I don't know, have a kid and then it put his like soul in them or something. None of this is explained. It's just like at some point she's like, which Roswell are you? And he's like, and then she's like, oh, you're the original Roswell. And he's like, yes, always. And she's like, oh, something about like the soul transfer thing that the Echidna was trying to do before she died with like the pink-haired elf. And she's like, oh, you did it. And he's like, yes, you just have to find a soul that is compatible enough. And then that's like nothing else is explained. And I was like, did you just like kill your own children to like recreate yourself again and again and again? Like I don't understand. Whatever. Stupid shit. Anyway, and then Amelia and Subaru chit chat outside while they're doing that, and they're like, I think everything is going to be okay. And then we get a scene of like Garf punching Roswell real hard in the face, and then Otto punched him real hard in the face, and then like Petra like slapping him, and everyone's like, this is what you get for being an asshole. And then what about you, Ram? And Ram's like rubbing his head and treating like while she's like a lap pillow, and she's like, I love Roswell, I'm not gonna do any of that stupid shit, you guys are assholes. And then and then everyone talks, and then Frederica's like, I don't need to hit him, I'm grateful for everything he did despite like his stupid asshole stuff that he recently did. And so we go through like that whole shebang, and then eventually Amelia's like, hey, all you guys are getting all this stuff and swearing, whatever. And even Roswell like at some point takes off his shirt, and he's got this like curse seal on him that if he breaks his oath never to hurt anybody in like this room ever again, then his soul will be like destroyed and sent to hell or something. And then that's like and then Subaru's like, why would you do that? And he's like, that was the deal, we literally made a contract or a wager that about this. And the Subaru's like, oh wow, so if I had lost I would have had that on me. And Ross was like, yes. And he's like, holy shit. Anyway, okay, so everyone, we're good, he can't hurt us, he can't betray us anymore, and we're gonna be good. And then Amelia's like, I have something to say. And I'm like, god damn it, Amelia, you were the worst. And so what she has to say is that she wants an apology, because this whole time Roswell at no point has said, I'm sorry. So then he says he's sorry, and everyone's like, hooray. And, and then we go to like a banquet scene held by like another noble that likes Amelia and is like hosting this thing because she's like a king candidate or queen candidate or whatever. And so she's going to like knight Subaru as like her first knight or whatever. And so he's dressed up all fancy, and him and Roswell have like a conversation about next steps. And Roswell says even though he's not going to betray them or do anything, his main goal is still to like bring back Echidna to life. And then he's going to figure out like a vessel, because I guess that's how he did it. So he's going to find like a compatible vessel someday and then bring her spirit back through that. And that's his goal in life. But that, he's not going to interfere, and the way he's going to do that is through Subaru, so like they're going to be best friends forever now, I guess. Then he gets called up, and we get this kind of hype scene about him getting knighted, and then we have like a dance party, and everyone's drinking and having a good time, and Subaru and Amelia are just outside talking about how they love each other and like pinky promise. And then she's like, you're going to come to my room later, right? And he's like, oh, Amelia, your temptations are so strong. And she's like, I don't understand what you're saying. and that's the end of season 2. All right. So, I don't like it. I don't like ReZero. It's very, I would say if I'd never seen anime before and I'd watched it, I'd be impressed. So my understanding in my head is that people who've seen this have never like watched anime before, or have watched like very little. Like I'm talking like if I watched any other anime, like shonen anime, just like cool anime, like mysterious anime, like this is pretty basic. Like it's like extremely basic. And like even the premise of the show, like the resurrection, like barely comes up in this entire fucking season. And I'm like, so you had a whole premise that you built the first season on and was boring, to be honest. But then you just drop it, and I'm like, okay, so like what's this guy's superpower? His like determination. I'm like, okay, that's not something I've not seen 1,000 times. So why am I watching this? And it's like none of the characters are that interesting at all. Like Roswell's kind of interesting, I guess. The witch stuff is like vaguely interesting as well, but that's just because I have a strange allure about witchcraft and witches since I was like a little kid. But if I didn't care about witches, I'd literally be like, I don't give a fuck about anything that's happening in this. Like, what in the world? Like, you have these like menacing things, like the white whale and the white rabbit that get destroyed like almost immediately, and then like I don't know. There never seems to be any like big issue, because at the end of the day you can just like resurrect. And then you have like the stuff with like the bishops, but they're like barely in this. And then when they're there for a second, and then the second time it's like they're almost like a joke because the witches are so much stronger. I don't know. interested whatsoever. I think there's a third season coming out. At some point, I thought there was like 10 seasons of this, but I think I was confusing this with Hunter x Hunter or something because I'm like, I feel like I read somewhere that like the third season is being brought over to English like soon. So maybe it's already out. I don't know. I'm not gonna look because I don't give a fuck, and I'm not gonna watch any more of this. I don't think I'm gonna get rid of it from like my server per se, because it's not bad, and I'd rather have my kids watch this than like whatever Western garbage comes out. But there you go. ReZero, mid. Mid is the word that meets mid-zero exactly. Like this is a mid show. Like it's just like I watched it and I forgot a lot of it and I was bored during some of it, but it wasn't bad. Like I don't regret watching it. I'm glad I watched it, so now if someone brings it up, I can make fun of them. But it wasn't torturous. It's almost like worse than bad because it's boring. Like when you watch bad, you get like excited because it's like so bad. But this is just like, okay, cool. So they're doing this now, huh? All right, they're having another like speech about how they love each other or some other stuff. And I'm like, I'm not watching like a seinen anime. I'm not watching something like Clover or that kind of stuff. So I don't know. Anyway, cool. Go ahead, like, share, subscribe, comment, and I will catch you guys later. Bye.